My husband's mother burst into the hospital room and shouted, "The baby will have our last name, that's final." My husband nodded and added, "You don't get a say in this." I smiled, turned to the nurse, and said, "Can you read the father's name on the birth certificate?" My husband grabbed the paper and went pale. Nathan and I had been married for 4 years. At first, things were okay, but his mom, Evelyn, always acted like she was in charge. She thought she was the most important person in the world and believed her son was perfect. To her, I was just some woman who took her son away. She never liked me. In the beginning, it was small things, like rude comments about my cooking. Then when we bought a house, she made snide remarks about how it wasn't a proper family home. Then came the pressure to have a baby. Evelyn didn't just want a grandchild, she wanted one with her family's last name. Nathan and I had already talked about this. I told him I wanted the baby to have my last name. He said he didn't care and agreed. But now, here I was in a hospital bed, tired and in pain, and his mom barges in, demanding her last name go on the baby's birth certificate. And Nathan? He agreed with her. At first, I thought I was hearing things wrong. But no, Nathan really stood there, arms crossed, acting like I didn't matter at all in this decision. Evelyn stood next to him, smiling like she had won. "The baby will have our name," she said like it was a fact. I looked at Nathan. "We talked about this. I gave birth. The baby gets my name." Nathan laughed like I was being ridiculous. "You don't have a choice, Clara," he said. "This is what's best." I just stared. I was exhausted, confused, and furious. Evelyn smiled like this was all going perfectly. "You should be thankful," she said. "Our family is giving your child a legacy." I wanted to scream. Then the nurse came in with the birth certificate paperwork. Before she could say anything, Evelyn snatched it and grabbed a pen. "Perfect, we'll just get this signed and—" I interrupted her. "Please read the father's name on that document." The room went quiet. Nathan grabbed the paper, looked at it, and went pale. Evelyn took it from him and read it. Then she screamed. Not a little scream, a full-on angry meltdown, because the name on the birth certificate wasn't Nathan's. Her face turned bright red. What is this?" she yelled, clutching the paper. Nathan stood frozen, shaking. They had no idea this was coming. They thought they had me trapped, but I wasn't the same woman they had pushed around for 4 years. I sat back and watched them fall apart. "This has to be a mistake," Evelyn yelled, waving the paper in the nurse's face. The nurse stayed calm. "It's correct, confirmed by a legal paternity test." Evelyn looked like she had been slapped. "A what?" she screamed, turning to me. "You cheated?" Another nurse peeked in, probably thinking something serious was happening. Nathan finally spoke, his voice low. "Clara, tell me it's not true." I looked at him like he was a stranger. "You're really gonna act like that?" I asked. "You, the guy who's been cheating on me for months?" Nathan looked shocked. I don't know what you're talking about." "Wrong move." I let out a dry laugh. "Really? You don't remember all those late-night gym sessions? Or those weekend work emergencies?" His eyes widened. "You don't remember coming home at 2 a.m., with lipstick on your shirt?" His jaw tightened. I kept going. "You don't remember the private investigator I hired?" He looked like he wanted to vanish. Evelyn was staring at us, speechless. "You're lying," she whispered. I turned to her with a smile. "Am I?" I grabbed my phone and pulled up a folder of photos. I showed her everything: Nathan with his mistress at a hotel, kissing in his car, hugging at a bar, sneaking into her apartment. Evelyn made a horrible sound. The best part? She recognized the woman. She snatched the phone from me, her hands shaking. "Oh my God," she said. "Is that?" "Oh yeah," I said, grinning. "That's her." Nathan dropped into a chair, hiding his face. The woman he was cheating with? A family friend. The same woman Evelyn had been hinting at for years as a better match for him. She finally got what she wanted, and it destroyed her. Evelyn turned on Nathan like lightning. "How could you do this to her?" she yelled, waving the phone in his face. Nathan stayed quiet. He had nothing to say. I let them argue for a bit before speaking again. "Oh," I said, stretching. "By the way, I already talked to a lawyer." Nathan looked up, panicked. "Clara, wait." I held up a hand. "Nope, too late." Then I dropped the final bomb. "Divorce papers are already filed. You'll be served tomorrow morning." Evelyn gasped. Nathan looked like a broken man. "And me?" I felt free. The room was silent. Evelyn was gripping the birth certificate so hard her knuckles were white. Nathan just sat there, staring at the floor. I wasn't angry anymore. I felt amazing, watching them panic, watching their plan blow up. It was better than I ever imagined. But then things got even better. Evelyn suddenly glared at me. "This doesn't make sense," she snapped. "You got pregnant 9 months ago, right?" I nodded. "Yep." Her eyes narrowed. "Then you must have been cheating on Nathan." Nathan lifted his head, clinging to her words like a lifeline. "Yeah," he said quietly, "you had an affair." I laughed, a real, loud laugh this time. "Oh sweetheart," I said, shaking my head, "I never lied, I just didn't tell you everything." Evelyn squinted at me. "You knew this whole time?" I smiled. "Oh, I knew, but here's the best part." Then I looked at Nathan. "You know how I found out you were cheating?" I asked. He looked confused. "The private investigator?" I shook my head. "Nope." "I mean, yeah," he confirmed it. I said, "But that's not how I found out." I leaned in a little, speaking softly so they had to really listen. "I found out," I whispered, "because your girlfriend told me herself." Nathan flinched like I had hit him. Evelyn gasped. Then Nathan's phone started buzzing on the hospital tray. He looked at it quickly. It was right next to me, lighting up. A name popped up on the screen, Madison. Evelyn's face turned pale. She knew who Madison was. She was the same woman Evelyn had been trying to get Nathan to be with for years. The same woman in those pictures I showed them. Nathan tried to grab the phone, but I picked it up first. Well, I said, "Looks like she knows what's going on." Nathan looked sick. Evelyn snatched the phone from me and hit answer. "You home-wrecking trash," she yelled. "How dare you ruin my son's marriage?" There was a pause. Then Madison laughed, and what she said next was perfect. "Oh, Evelyn, sweetie," she said, clearly enjoying herself. "Your son ruined his own marriage, and you know what? You might want to sit down for this." Evelyn froze. Nathan looked terrified. Madison sighed. "I wasn't going to say anything, but honestly, you both deserve it." Then she dropped the bomb. "I'm pregnant." The room exploded. Evelyn screamed so loud her voice cracked. Nathan jumped up and knocked over the hospital tray. "You're lying," Evelyn yelled. "You're just trying to destroy him." Madison stayed calm. "Nope, I've got proof. Want to see the ultrasound?" Nathan sat back down, looking like he was about to pass out. I just watched it all fall apart. Then Nathan asked, voice shaking, "Is it mine?" Madison laughed. "Now you want to ask that?" "Yes, Nathan, it's yours. And guess what? I already put your name on the birth certificate." Evelyn looked like she might faint. Nathan was breathing hard. Then Madison added one last thing. "Oh, and Claire," she said, "you're amazing. Seriously, enjoy your life without this guy." She hung up. Silence. Nathan looked like a ghost. Evelyn dropped into a chair, head in her hands. Me? I reached for my water, took a sip, and sighed. "Well," I said, "that went even better than I expected." The room was dead quiet, like after a bomb goes off and everyone's just staring at the ruins. Then Evelyn stood up, eyes full of hate. "This is your fault," she hissed at me. I raised an eyebrow. "Really? How?" "You set this up," she screamed. "You're trying to ruin my son's life." I laughed, tired and amused. "Your son cheated. He got someone pregnant. I didn't make him do any of that." "You tricked him," she shouted. "You made him think the baby was his." Nathan flinched but didn't say anything. I took a deep breath. "Okay, let's say I did set this all up," I said calmly. I leaned forward. "Why was it so easy?" Evelyn's mouth opened, then closed. "Because she knew the truth, Nathan had done it all himself. I just didn't protect him from the consequences." "You'll pay for this," she growled. I shrugged. "What more can you take from me? I already cut out the worst parts of my life, you and your son." She made an awful sound and then turned on Nathan. She grabbed his arm, shaking him. "Fix this. Claire will take you back, right, CLA?" I snorted. "Not a chance." Nathan looked at me with hope. "CLA?" I held up a hand. "No, we're done. I filed for divorce before I even gave birth. I just waited to tell you." His eyes widened. "You planned this?" "I planned to protect myself," I said. "You planned your own downfall." Nathan looked like he might cry. Evelyn wasn't done. "You have to fix this," she screamed. "What will people think? What will our family say?" And then she looked at me with disgust. "You think anyone else will want you?" A single mom? You'll be alone forever. Nathan spun toward her. Mom, stop. But she didn't. Do you know how hard I worked raising you? She yelled. I made you perfect. And now you ruined everything for her. And then? Nathan snapped. He stood up so fast his chair fell over. His whole body was shaking. You made me like this, he said. Evelyn froze. I never even wanted to marry Claire, he said, but you pushed me. You said I needed someone quiet, someone who wouldn't challenge me. I blinked. That was news to me. You told me Madison was better, he said. You told me to keep my options open. You told me cheating was normal. Nathan was spiraling. You taught me how to lie, how to pretend. You made me like this. I had never seen him like that before. Evelyn backed away, scared. Nathan looked at me. I'm sorry, he whispered. I don't even know who I am anymore. I looked him in the eyes. I felt nothing. No love, no anger, just peace. That's not my problem anymore, I said. Then I pressed the nurse call button. She walked in, took one look, and sighed. Should I call security? She asked. Yes, I said. Get them out of my room. Nathan slumped. Evelyn screamed like crazy, but I didn't care. I watched as they were taken out. Evelyn kicked and yelled, but none of it mattered. For the first time in years, I felt free. Nathan kept trying to reach out after that. Messages, gifts, I ignored them. Evelyn tried to ruin my name. Didn't work. I had proof of everything. The court sided with me. I got full custody, the house, everything. Nathan got nothing. Evelyn lost her power. Eventually, even her friends dropped her. And me? I have my baby, my home, and peace. Sometimes, revenge isn't about hurting someone back. It's about finally walking away, for good.
The day Aunt Eleanor died, I was elbow deep in garden soil, planting the heirloom roses she'd given me for my birthday. My phone buzzed 3 times before I finally pulled off my gloves to answer it. Miss Blackwood? A formal voice I didn't recognize. This is James Morton, your Aunt Eleanor's attorney. I'm afraid I have some difficult news. My heart stopped. The roses suddenly felt heavy in my hands. Eleanor's last gift to me. What happened? Your aunt passed away in her sleep last night. He hesitated. She left explicit instructions for me to contact you first, before anyone else in the family. I sank to my knees in the dirt, barely registering his words. Aunt Eleanor, the woman who taught me to read, who'd snuck me chocolate chip cookies during dreary family functions, who'd supported every dream I'd ever had, was gone. Miss Blackwood, are you there? Yes, I managed. I'm here. What do you need me to do? Your aunt left specific instructions about her funeral arrangements. And another pause. She left you a letter that must be opened before the service. Would you be able to come to my office today? I looked down at the roses. Queen Elizabeth variety, Eleanor's favorite. She'd handed them to me just 2 weeks ago, her eyes twinkling with her usual mischief. These have been in my family for generations, she'd said, just like secrets. At the time, I'd thought it was just another of her cryptic comments. Now, I wasn't so sure. I'll be there in an hour, I told the lawyer. James Morton's office was exactly what you'd expect from someone who handled old money. All dark wood and leather-bound books, with a view of the city skyline that probably cost more than my yearly salary. He stood as I entered, offering a sympathetic smile. Miss Blackwood, thank you for coming so quickly. Please, have a seat. I sat in one of the plush leather chairs, trying not to fit it. Mr. Morton, what's this about? Why did Aunt Eleanor want you to contact me first? He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out 2 envelopes. One was thick, official-looking, with the law firm's letterhead. The other was smaller, cream-colored, with my name written in Eleanor's elegant handwriting. Your aunt was an unusual woman, Morton said carefully. Brilliant in business, but also quite particular about how things should be done. She left very specific instructions about her will and her funeral arrangements. "That sounds like Eleanor," I said softly. He slid the cream envelope across the desk. "She wanted you to read this privately. Then we can discuss the rest." My hands trembled slightly as I picked up the envelope. Eleanor's distinctive perfume, roses and vanilla, still clung to the paper. I opened it carefully, pulling out a single sheet of her personal stationery. "My dearest Olivia, if you're reading this, I've finally run out of time. Don't be sad. I've lived exactly the life I wanted, which is more than most people can say. But I need one last favor from you, my darling niece. At my funeral, you'll need to read a letter. One that will change our family forever. You'll find it in the hidden compartment of my jewelry box, the one I showed you how to open when you were 12. Remember the trick with the rose carving? Some people might call this revenge, but I prefer to think of it as justice. Long delayed, perhaps, but justice nonetheless. The truth is, I've left everything to you. Montgomery Industries, my personal assets, all of it. But there's one condition. You must read that letter at my funeral, with the entire family present. No exceptions. I know this is a lot to ask, especially now. But you've always been the strong one, Olivia. The honest one. That's why it has to be you. All my love, Aunt Eleanor. P.S. Don't let them bury me in anything beige. You know how I feel about beige." I read the letter twice, then looked up at Morton. "She left everything to me." He nodded, opening the official envelope. Montgomery Industries, her personal estate, investment portfolios, approximately $89 million in total assets. But as she mentioned, it's conditional on you fulfilling her final request. My head spun. Eleanor had always been generous with me, but this was beyond anything I could have imagined. What about the rest of the family? My father, my cousins? There are some small bequests, but the bulk of the estate is yours, assuming, of course, you agree to her terms. I thought about my father, who'd always resented his younger sister's success. About my cousins, who'd spent years sucking up to Eleanor, hoping to inherit her fortune. About all the family gatherings where Eleanor had sat quietly, watching everyone with those knowing eyes of hers, like she was waiting for something. "When is the funeral?" I asked. 3 days from now. Your aunt was very specific about the arrangements. The service will be held at St. Michael's Cathedral, followed by a reception at her estate. The entire family is expected to attend. I stood up, clutching Eleanor's letter. Then I should go. I have a jewelry box to find. Morton called after me as I reached the door. "Miss Blackwood? One more thing. Your aunt asked me to tell you. She said you'll know what to do with the truth." The drive to Eleanor's estate took 40 minutes, but it felt like hours. My mind raced with questions. What was it in that second letter? What secret was so important that Eleanor would make it a condition of her will? The gates opened automatically as I approached. Eleanor had given me the access code years ago, saying she trusted me more than her security system. The house was exactly as I remembered. A sprawling Victorian mansion set amid perfectly manicured gardens, with Eleanor's beloved roses climbing every available surface. Mrs. Peters, the housekeeper, met me at the door. Her eyes were red from crying. "Oh, Miss Olivia, I'm so glad you're here. She left instructions that you were to have full access to her rooms." "Thank you, Mrs. Peters. I won't be long." Eleanor's bedroom was on the second floor, overlooking her prize, rose garden. Like everything else about my aunt, It was elegant but full of hidden whimsy. Silk curtains in bright patterns, modern art next to family portraits, and everywhere, touches of her beloved roses. The jewelry box sat on her dresser, exactly where it had always been. Beautiful Brazilian rosewood, carved with intricate floral patterns. I ran my fingers along the edge until I found it. The small rose carving that concealed the release for the hidden compartment. Third petal from the left, I whispered, remembering Eleanor's instructions from all those years ago. There was a soft click, and a panel in the bottom slid open. Inside was another envelope, sealed with wax and marked, "To be read at my funeral." My hand shook as I picked it up. It was heavier than I expected, and I could feel what seemed like photographs inside. For a moment, I was tempted to open it right there. But I knew Eleanor. Everything she did had a purpose. If she wanted this revealed at her funeral, in front of the whole family, she must have had her reasons. I slipped the envelope into my bag and took one last look around the room. On the bedside table was a framed photo I'd never seen before. Eleanor as a young woman, standing in front of Montgomery Industries' first office. She was smiling that knowing smile of hers, the one that always made me feel like she could see right through people's pretenses. "What did you know, Aunt Eleanor?" I whispered to the photograph. What secret was worth waiting a lifetime to reveal? The next 3 days passed in a blur of funeral arrangements and family drama. My father called 6 times, alternating between concern about my involvement in the arrangements and barely concealed anxiety about the will. My cousins sent a barrage of text messages, each one more transparently self-interested than the last. Through it all, I kept Eleanor's sealed envelope close. At night, I'd take it out and look at it, wondering what revelations it contained. What truth was so important that Eleanor would stake her entire legacy on its revelation? The morning of the funeral dawned bright and clear. I dressed carefully in a deep blue suit, Eleanor's favorite color, and pinned one of her prized roses to my lapel. The envelope felt heavy in my bag, like it was weighted with more than just paper and photographs. St. Michael's Cathedral was packed by the time I arrived. The Montgomerys were old money, and Eleanor had been a prominent figure in both business and philanthropy. The pews were filled with a mix of family, business associates, and city officials. My father intercepted me as soon as I entered, his face tight with anxiety. "Olivia, we need to talk about the will. Morton won't tell us anything. Says we have to wait until after the service." "What's going on?" I met his eyes steadily. "We'll all find out together, Dad. That's what Aunt Eleanor wanted." He grabbed my arm as I tried to pass. "Olivia, if you know something..." "Let go, Dad," I said quietly, but firmly. "This is Eleanor's funeral. Show some respect." The service itself was beautiful, exactly as Eleanor would have wanted it. No beige in sight. The flowers were all roses in deep reds and vibrant pinks, her favorite colors. The minister spoke about her generosity, her intelligence, her dedication to making the world better. Finally, it was time. Morton caught my eye from the front pew and gave a slight nod. My hands trembled slightly as I walked to the podium, Eleanor's envelope clutched in my hands. The cathedral fell silent as I faced the congregation. My father sat in the front row, his face a mask of barely controlled anxiety. Next to him, my cousins John and Rebecca leaned forward eagerly, like vultures awaiting their next meal. I took a deep breath, breathing in the scent of roses that filled the air. In that moment, I could almost feel Eleanor standing beside me, giving me strength. Before she died, I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. My Aunt Eleanor left me a letter with specific instructions. She wanted it read here today, in front of everyone who knew her. I broke the wax seal slowly, aware of hundreds of eyes watching my every move. Inside were several sheets of paper, and as I'd suspected, photographs. As I pulled them out, I heard my father make a strangled sound from the front pew. The first photograph showed a young Eleanor standing next to a man I didn't recognize. They were both smiling, holding up what looked like blueprints. The second photo showed the same man at what appeared to be a construction site, with the early foundations of what I now recognized as Montgomery Industries' first building. My name was Eleanor Montgomery. I read from the letter. And this is the truth about how Montgomery Industries began. My hands were steady as I began reading Eleanor's letter, my voice carrying clearly through the hushed cathedral. My name was Eleanor Montgomery, and this is the truth about how Montgomery Industries began. The man in these photographs is Harold Bennett, a brilliant engineer and my business partner in 1975. He was also the true founder of what would become Montgomery Industries. A murmur rippled through the congregation. In the front row, my father's face had gone completely white. Harold and I met at university. I continued reading. We shared a vision of creating sustainable building materials that would revolutionize the construction industry. Harold had the technical genius, and I had the business acumen. Together, we created the foundation of what Montgomery Industries would become. I pulled out another photograph, this one showing Eleanor and Harold shaking hands over what appeared to be a contract. We were equal partners, splitting everything 50-50. The patents, the company, the profits, all of it was shared between us. Until the night of October 15, 1976, when Harold died in what was reported as a car accident. My father started to stand, but my Uncle James pulled him back down. I kept reading. But it wasn't an accident. The brake lines in Harold's car had been cut. I discovered this too late, after the police had already closed the case. I also discovered something else. Papers had been filed just hours before Harold's death, transferring his entire share of the company to the Montgomery Family Trust. Papers that bore his signature. I looked up, meeting my father's eyes directly. A signature that I now know was forged by his business partner at the time, my own brother, Richard Montgomery. The cathedral erupted in gasps and whispers. My father stood up, his face contorted with rage. "Stop this immediately," he shouted. "This is slander." "No, Dad," I said calmly. "This is truth. Aunt Eleanor left proof." I held up a stack of documents from the envelope. The original contract between Eleanor and Harold. Forensic analysis of the forged documents. Police reports that were buried. Bank transfers. She kept everything. Why? The question came from my cousin John, who was staring at his uncle, my father, with dawning horror. Why reveal this now? I turned back to Eleanor's letter. "I'm revealing this now because I've spent 45 years building this company into something Harold would have been proud of. I've used our success to fund research, to support sustainable development, to create opportunities for brilliant minds like his. But I've also spent 45 years watching my brother profit from his crime, watching him raise his children to believe that privilege and power put them above the law." My father had sunk back into his pew, all the fight gone out of him. I continued reading. "The truth is, I should have come forward years ago. But by the time I had gathered all the evidence, the company was employing thousands of people. Going public would have destroyed not just Richard, but countless innocent families who depended on Montgomery Industries for their livelihood. So I made a different choice. I decided to wait, to build, to make sure that when the truth finally came out, the company would survive it. I pulled out one final document from the envelope, a yellowed envelope addressed to Harold Bennett's only surviving relative, his daughter Sarah. Which brings me to my final confession. Over the years, I've kept track of Harold's daughter. I've anonymously funded her education, her research, her work in sustainable engineering. I've watched her grow into the kind of brilliant, ethical scientist her father was. Sarah Bennett now runs one of the most innovative green technology firms in the country, though she's never known who was backing her. More guests filled the cathedral as a woman stood up from the middle pews. She was about my age, with Harold's dark eyes and determined expression. Eleanor had arranged everything, even ensuring Sarah Bennett would be here for this moment. The second part of my will, I read, my voice growing stronger, leaves a 30% share of Montgomery Industries to Sarah Bennett as partial restitution for what was stolen from her father. The controlling interest goes to my niece Olivia, the only member of the Montgomery family who has shown the same commitment to ethics and innovation that Harold and I once shared. I looked up at the stunned faces before me. The letter is signed, Eleanor Montgomery, co-founder of Montgomery Industries and keeper of its greatest shame. The silence that followed was deafening. Then slowly, Sarah Bennett began walking toward the front of the cathedral. She stopped in front of my father, who seemed to have aged decades in the past few minutes. All these years, Sarah said, her voice shaking slightly, I thought my father was a failure who abandoned his work. I never knew, never imagined. Miss Bennett, I said, stepping down from the podium, I'm so sorry for what was taken from you. She turned to me, tears in her eyes. Thank you for having the courage to read that letter. Your aunt? She was watching over me my whole life, wasn't she? She was trying to make things right, I said softly, in her own way. The next few hours passed in a blur. The reception was unsurprisingly tense, with family members splitting into factions. Those who demanded the letter be suppressed, those who insisted on going to the police, and those who simply sat in stunned silence. My father disappeared immediately after the service. I wouldn't hear from him for weeks, not until he checked himself into a rehabilitation facility, finally facing the guilt he carried for 45 years. In the months that followed, the truth about Montgomery Industries' founding became public knowledge. But Eleanor had been right. The company was strong enough to survive it. With Sarah Bennett's technical expertise and my commitment to Eleanor's vision, we began a new chapter in the company's history. 1 year after the funeral, I stood in Eleanor's rose garden, now blooming more beautifully than ever. Sarah had joined me for what had become our weekly meeting, where we discussed everything from company strategy to our shared love of sustainable innovation. You know what's strange? Sarah said, gently touching one of Eleanor's prized Queen Elizabeth roses. I always felt like someone was looking out for me, guiding my career from afar. I used to think it was my father's spirit. Now I know it was Eleanor. She tried to protect everyone, I said. The company, its employees, you, even my father in her own way. She just couldn't let the truth die with her. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. Do you think she made the right choice, waiting all those years? I considered the question carefully. I think she did the best she could with an impossible situation. She turned a company built on fraud into a force for good. She made sure you were taken care of. And in the end, she made sure the truth came out on her terms. And what about you? Sarah asked. Do you ever regret being the one who had to reveal it all? I looked out over the rose garden, remembering Eleanor's knowing smile, her cryptic comments her quiet strength. "No," I said finally. "Eleanor chose me because she knew I could handle it. She knew I'd understand that sometimes doing the right thing means facing uncomfortable truths. She would be proud of what we've built," Sarah said, gesturing toward the Montgomery Industries building visible in the distance. "A real partnership, just like she and my father intended." I smiled, touching one of the roses Eleanor had given me, now blooming in her garden. She once told me these roses had been in her family for generations, just like secrets. But maybe it's time for new traditions. Truth instead of secrets. Partnership instead of power. Building something together instead of taking from each other. Sarah squeezed my hand. "I think both our fathers would like that." That evening, as I sat in Eleanor's study, now my study, going over company reports, I found a small note tucked into her old desk calendar. It was dated the day she died, written in her elegant hand. "Dearest Olivia, if you're reading this, you've done what I asked. You've faced the truth and handled it with grace. That's why I chose you, not just to inherit the company, but to make it better than it was, to make it what Harold and I dreamed it could be. The roses in the garden will bloom again next spring. When they do, remember that beauty can grow from even the darkest soil, if we have the courage to plant it. All my love, Eleanor." I placed the note carefully in my drawer and looked out at the garden, where the setting sun painted the roses in shades of gold. Eleanor had left me more than just a company. She'd left me a chance to right an old wrong, to build something meaningful, to prove that it's never too late for truth to bloom. Tomorrow, there would be meetings and decisions and all the responsibilities that came with running a multi-million-dollar company. But for now, I sat in the quiet of Eleanor's study, surrounded by the scent of roses, knowing that sometimes the heaviest inheritances aren't measured in money, but in the weight of the truths we choose to carry. And like Eleanor, I would carry this truth with grace, using it not to destroy, but to build, not to punish, but to heal, creating something beautiful from the soil of the past. After all, that's what Eleanor had done. That's what she had trained me to do. And somewhere, I knew, she was watching with that knowing smile of hers, proud that her final secret had finally found its way into the light. "Sign here, dear. It's just a formality." Those were Andrew's words 5 years ago as he slid the prenuptial agreement across his mahogany desk, Mont Blanc pen gleaming in his manicured hand. I remember how he smiled. That confident, charming smile that had won me over at the charity gala where we'd met. "You do trust me, don't you, Sophie?" Of course I trusted him. I was 28, freshly graduated from my MBA program, and head over heels in love with one of Boston's most eligible bachelors. Andrew Hamilton was everything I'd dreamed of. Successful, brilliant, and seemingly devoted to me. Now, standing in that same office, watching him pack his designer briefcase with one hand while texting his secretary with the other, I wondered how I could have been so blind. "It's nothing personal, Sophie," he said, not even looking up from his phone. "Jessica and I, we just connect on a different level. You understand." Jessica, his 23-year-old secretary who'd started working for him 8 months ago, the one he'd insisted on hiring personally, despite her conspicuous lack of qualifications. "And the prenup?" My voice sounded distant, even to myself. "That was your plan all along, wasn't it?" Now he did look up, that familiar smirk playing across his face. "Smart girl, always knew you were clever." He pulled a document from his desk drawer. 1 page, very clear. In the event of divorce, you get nothing. No alimony, no property rights, no shares in Hamilton Industries. You signed it, remember? I remembered. I also remembered how he'd rushed me through it, how he kept talking about the wedding plans, distracting me from the fine print. Good luck surviving, he added, shouldering his briefcase. Though I hear the library is hiring. You've always liked books, haven't you? He laughed as he walked out, leaving me alone in the office where I'd spent countless hours helping him build Hamilton Industries into what it was today. The company he'd now locked me out of with a single page of legal text. My phone buzzed. A text from Megan, my best friend, and, as luck would have it, a corporate lawyer. Just heard. Coming over now. Don't kisahin ainoihi. I sank into one of the plush office chairs, my mind racing. 5 years of marriage, of dedicating myself to Andrew's company, of putting my own career dreams on hold, all ended with a smirk and a one-page prenup. Megan arrived like a whirlwind, her court heels clicking against the marble floors, her face flushed with anger. That bastard. I knew he was planning something when he started staying late with that Barbie doll secretary. She dropped her briefcase on the desk and pulled me into a fierce hug. Tell me everything. I did, starting with finding the texts on Andrew's iPad 2 weeks ago. Messages to Jessica about their future together. How he'd grown increasingly distant, working late, taking mysterious business trips. Then this morning's bombshell. Divorce papers delivered to my office, along with the prenup I'd signed 5 years ago. He said it's nothing personal. I finished bitterly. That Jessica understands him better. Understands his wallet. More like, Megan muttered, already flipping through the documents. Let me see this prenup he's so smug about. I handed it over, watching as her sharp eyes scanned the legal text. After a moment, she frowned. Something's off here, she said slowly. The formatting, it's not quite right. What do you mean? She held the page up to the light. See these margin marks? They don't align properly. And the page number. She pointed to a tiny 1 at the bottom. Why number a single page? My heart started beating faster. You think there's more? I think, Megan said, pulling out her phone. We need to talk to the lawyer who drafted this. Gerald Foster, according to the letterhead. And lucky for us, I know exactly where to find him. 2 hours later, we sat in Gerald Foster's cramped office in downtown Boston. He was older than I expected, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and a body that looked like it had seen better days. Of course, I remember the Hamilton prenup, he said, pulling out a thick file. Quite an interesting document, actually. One of my last cases before retirement. Mr. Foster. Megan leaned forward. The copy my friend was given shows only 1 page. But you're indicating there was more. The old lawyer's eyes narrowed. 1 page? That's not possible. The original document was quite extensive. Multiple pages dealing with various contingencies, particularly regarding intellectual property and company holdings. My hands started trembling. Intellectual property? Yes, my dear. You see, Andrew was quite insistent about protecting his company's patents and trade secrets. But your father, clever man, your father, he insisted on adding some provisions of his own. My father, I whispered. But he died before the wedding. He never met Andrew. Foster smiled gently. Oh, he met him. 3 months before his death, your father came to me. He was concerned about Andrew's reputation in certain business circles. He wanted to make sure you were protected. He turned to his computer, typing slowly with 2 fingers. I should have the original scanned somewhere. Ah, here we go. The printer whirred to life, producing several pages. Foster handed them to me with a flourish. Page 2 is particularly interesting, the one dealing with intellectual property theft and corporate espionage. I stared at the documents, my vision blurring slightly. There it was, page 2 of a prenup I'd never seen in its entirety. And what I read made my blood run cold. "Megan," I said quietly, "I need you to look at this. Now." She took the pages, her eyes widening as she read. "Oh my God," she breathed. "Sophie, do you know what this means?" I did. I was beginning to understand exactly what my father had done, and why Andrew had been so careful to hide these pages from me. The smug smile, the rush to get me to sign, the careful distraction. It all made sense now. "Mr. Foster," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "I need copies of everything. And then I need you to tell me exactly what my father said about Andrew Hamilton." The old lawyer's eyes twinkled. "My dear, I thought you'd never ask." The next few hours were a crash course in corporate law and my father's foresight. Thomas Bennett hadn't built a successful tech company by being naive. He'd seen something in Andrew that had worried him, something that had prompted him to add very specific clauses to the prenup. "Your father suspected Andrew was after more than just a marriage," Foster explained. "He'd heard rumors about corporate espionage, about stolen patents. He couldn't prove anything. But he wanted to protect me," I finished. "And his company's intellectual property." Precisely. The second page of the prenup includes a clause that any intellectual property belonging to Bennett Technologies would remain solely under your control in the event of a divorce, including patents developed using Bennett tech. Megan was practically bouncing in her seat. "Sophie, don't you see what this means? Hamilton Industries' biggest products, their whole AI division, it's all built on Bennett Technologies' original patents." I did see. I saw exactly why Andrew had hidden these pages, why he'd been so confident with his one-page prenup. He thought he'd covered his tracks. He never knew, I said slowly. All these years, he never knew my father had outplayed him. Foster nodded. Thomas was very clear. These pages were to remain sealed unless Andrew initiated divorce proceedings. He said, and I quote, "Let him show his true colors first." My phone buzzed again. Andrew, probably calling to gloat or pressure me about the divorce papers. I let it go to voicemail, my mind already racing with possibilities. "Megan," I said, turning to my friend, "how quickly can we file a countersuit?" She grinned, already pulling out her laptop. "Give me an hour. By the time we're done, Andrew Hamilton won't know what hit him." I touched the papers reverently, thinking of my father. He'd seen through Andrew's charm, had put these protections in place even when I was too blinded by love to see the truth. "One more thing," Foster said, pulling out another file. "Your father left this for you. Said to give it to you when the time comes. I think the time is now." The envelope he handed me was thick, sealed with my father's company logo. Inside was a USB drive and a letter in his familiar handwriting. "My dearest Sophie, if you're reading this, then Andrew has shown his true nature. I'm sorry I won't be there to help you through this, but I've left you everything you need to protect yourself." My father's letter trembled in my hands as I continued reading. "My dearest Sophie, if you're reading this, then Andrew has shown his true nature. I'm sorry I won't be there to help you through this, but I've left you everything you need to protect yourself." The USB drive contains proof of what I suspected: Andrew's systematic theft of Bennett Technologies patents. Email trails, modified code, timestamps that prove our technology was developed first. He thought he was clever, but he didn't count on me keeping backup servers running even after the company's sale. I know this will hurt, sweetheart. You loved him, and he betrayed that love. But you're stronger than you know. You're my daughter, and Bennett's don't break. We rebuild. Use this information wisely. And remember, sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all, but justice served cold and clean. All my love, Dad. Megan was already plugging the USB drive into her laptop, her eyes widening as she scrolled through the files. Sophie, she breathed. This is incredible. Your father documented everything. Every patent Andrew stole, every piece of code he modified. He knew, I said softly. Dad knew what Andrew was planning all along. And he left you the perfect weapon. Megan turned the laptop so I could see. Look at this. Emails between Andrew and his development team discussing how to disguise the stolen Bennett tech. Timestamps proving your father's company developed these systems years before Hamilton Industries claimed them. My phone buzzed again. Another call from Andrew. This time, I answered, having second thoughts about the divorce. His smug voice made my skin crawl. Actually, I said calmly, I just had a fascinating meeting with Gerald Foster. Remember him? The lawyer who drafted our prenup? There was a slight pause. That old fool. What about him? He showed me something interesting. The full prenup. All the pages you conveniently forgot to show me 5 years ago. The silence on the other end was deafening. Sophie, he said finally, his tone carefully controlled. I don't know what you think you found, but page 2, I cut him off. The one about intellectual property rights. Specifically, Bennett Technologies patents. Ring any bells? I heard him inhale sharply. That's impossible. Those pages were destroyed. Apparently not. Oh, and Dad left me something else. A USB drive full of proof that Hamilton Industries' entire AI division is built on stolen technology. My technology, according to the prenup you signed. You're bluffing. But I could hear the fear creeping into his voice. Am I? Check your email. Megan just sent you a sample of what we have. I'll give you an hour to call me back. I hung up, my heart pounding but my hands steady. Megan grinned at me. That was badass. He'll call his lawyers immediately, I said, starting to pace. Try to find a way around this. Let him try. Megan was already typing furiously. I'm filing for an emergency injunction right now. By tomorrow morning, Hamilton Industries won't be able to use any of their AI systems without risking massive penalties. It took Andrew exactly 43 minutes to call back. What do you want? His voice was tight with barely controlled rage. A meeting. Tomorrow morning, your office. Bring your lawyers. And Jessica too. She should hear this. Fine. 9 a.m. Oh, and Andrew? Don't try anything clever. The evidence is already in safe hands. I spent that night in my home office, going through every file my father had left. The more I read, the more amazed I was at his foresight. He hadn't just documented the theft. He created a complete roadmap of how Hamilton Industries had integrated the stolen technology into their systems. By morning, I was ready. I dressed carefully in my sharpest suit. Valentino, bought with my own money from my years working before I met Andrew. The irony wasn't lost on me. Megan met me outside Hamilton Industries headquarters, alongside Gerald Foster and 2 other lawyers from her firm. Ready to take him down? I touched the USB drive in my pocket. Ready. Andrew's executive conference room was full when we arrived. He sat at the head of the table, surrounded by his legal team. Jessica was there too, looking uncomfortable in a dress that was trying too hard to be professional. "Let's make this quick," Andrew said, not bothering to stand. "Whatever you think you have." "Oh, I know exactly what I have," I interrupted, nodding to Megan. She started distributing folders to everyone in the room. "Page 1, I said clearly, is the prenup you showed me. Page 2, the one you hid, gives me full rights to any Bennett Technologies patents in the event of divorce. Pages 3 through 10 detail exactly how Hamilton Industries stole and modified those patents." Andrew's lawyers were flipping through the documents, their faces growing increasingly concerned. One of them leaned over to whisper something in Andrew's ear. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. "You can't prove." "Actually, we can prove everything." Megan connected her laptop to the room's display screen. "These are the original Bennett Technologies patents, filed 3 years before Hamilton Industries suddenly developed remarkably similar systems." For the next hour, we laid out our case methodically: the stolen code, the modified timestamps, the internal emails discussing how to disguise the theft. With each revelation, Andrew's face grew paler. Jessica watched the presentation with growing horror, finally standing up abruptly. I need to." "Stay," I said firmly. "You should hear this too. The company you think you're getting, it's built on theft, and it's about to come crashing down." One of Andrew's lawyers cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should discuss settlement terms." "No." Andrew slammed his hand on the table. "I built this company. I made it what it is." "You stole what my father built," I corrected him. "And now you have a choice. Either we do this the easy way, or we let the FBI's corporate fraud division handle it." Dad sent them copies of everything too. The room erupted in chaos. Lawyers huddling together, Andrew shouting about betrayal, Jessica slipping quietly out the door. Finally, Andrew's lead lawyer spoke. "What are your terms?" I pulled out another document, one I'd prepared last night. "Full control of Hamilton Industries' AEI division. It goes back to Bennett Technologies, which I still own. You keep the rest of the company, but you license our technology legally from now on. And," I smiled coldly, "I want a public statement acknowledging where the technology really came from." "You can't be serious," Andrew sputtered. "That division is worth billions." "It was worth billions when my father developed it too," I said quietly, "before you stole it." The negotiations took hours. By the end, Andrew was a shadow of the confident man who'd smirked at me yesterday. The final agreement was even better than I'd hoped. I got the AI division, a seat on Hamilton Industries board, and a public acknowledgement of Bennett Technologies' contributions. "One more thing," I said as the lawyers finished the paperwork. "The divorce settlement. I want the house." Andrew looked up, surprised. "The beach house? Why? It's barely worth." "It's where my father spent his last summer," I cut him off. "It matters to me. You can keep the penthouse. I'm sure Jessica will love it." That evening, I sat in my father's old study at the beach house, watching the sunset over the ocean. Megan had gone home, promising to handle all the legal follow-up. The day's events felt almost surreal. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "I'm sorry. I didn't know about any of this." I didn't respond. She'd learn her own lessons about Andrew soon enough. Opening my laptop, I logged into the Bennett Technologies servers for the first time in years. The familiar interface welcomed me home, and I could almost hear my father's voice guiding me through the code like he used to. Another text came through, this one from Andrew. "You'll regret this. You have no idea how to run a tech division." I smiled, thinking of all the nights I'd spent learning coding from my father, all the summers interning at Bennett Technologies before I met Andrew. He'd never bothered to ask about my background in tech. He just assumed I was another pretty face with a business degree. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of transitions. The press had a field day with the story. Hamilton Industries' AEI division returns to original innovator's daughter. Andrew's reputation in the business world was in shambles, and Jessica had already moved on to greener pastures. I threw myself into rebuilding Bennett Technologies, discovering that I remembered more of my father's lessons than I'd realized. The team welcomed me warmly, many of them old employees who'd worked with Dad. 1 month after the takeover, I stood in front of Bennett Technologies' headquarters, now restored to its former glory. The sign above the door gleamed in the morning sun. Bennett Technologies, innovation with integrity. My phone buzzed, a message from Megan. "Andrew's trying to salvage what's left of Hamilton Industries. Apparently, their stock is tanking without the AEI division. Need any new clients?" I laughed, tucking the phone away. Let him struggle. I had more important things to focus on. That evening, I visited my father's grave, placing fresh flowers by the headstone. "You knew," I said softly. "You knew he tried to take everything, so you made sure I had what I needed to take it back." The wind rustled through the trees, and I could almost hear his response. "Bennett's don't break. We rebuild." As I drove back to the beach house, I thought about everything that had happened. Andrew had thought he was destroying me, but he'd actually set me free. Free to reclaim my father's legacy, free to prove what I was capable of. My father's letter sat framed on my desk now, a daily reminder that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's justice, served exactly when it needs to be. The next morning, as I walked into my office at Bennett Technologies, my assistant handed me the latest market reports. Our stock was soaring, new clients were lined up for meetings, and the tech blogs were buzzing about our upcoming innovations. "Oh, and Miss Bennett?" she added with a smile. "Mr. Hamilton's office called. They want to discuss licensing terms for some of our new patents." I smiled, settling into my chair. "Tell them to send a proposal. And Sarah? Make sure they know our terms are non-negotiable." Looking out over the city skyline from my office, my father's old office, I felt a deep sense of peace. Andrew had tried to take everything from me, thinking I was just a naive girl he could manipulate. Instead, he'd given me back everything I was meant to have all along. Sometimes I mused, the best hidden pages are the ones written in our own hearts, just waiting for the right moment to be revealed. My father always said money was the only measure of a man's worth. On the day I left home, he made sure to demonstrate exactly how little he thought I was worth. "Here's $100, he sneered, throwing the bills at my feet. "That's all a failure like you deserves." I was 22, fresh out of college with an engineering degree my parents hadn't bothered to attend the ceremony for. Standing in our expansive living room, my single suitcase packed with everything I owned, I watched the bills flutter to the marble floor like fallen leaves. The Harrison family fortune loomed around us. Crystal chandeliers, antique furniture, priceless art, all of it screaming old money and older pride. For generations, we'd been investment bankers, each son following his father into the prestigious halls of Harrison and Sons Investment Group. Until me. Engineering. My father had spat when I declared my major. Engineers are glorified mechanics. No son of mine will waste his life tinkering with machines. But I saw something they didn't. While they were counting their millions in traditional investments, I recognized that the future belonged to technology. The next great fortunes wouldn't be made in mahogany-paneled investment offices. They'd be built in garages and labs by people who understood how to merge innovation with opportunity. My mother stood by the grand staircase, martini in hand at barely noon. "James, darling, there's still time to fix this. Come back to the firm. Your father can smooth things over with the board." I looked at her, really looked at her, seeing the practiced smile that had never quite reached her eyes. Growing up, I'd watched her measure her worth by the size of her diamond rings, each one larger than the last, as if trying to fill some void that kept expanding. "No, Mother, I'm done trying to be what you want." My father's face turned that dangerous shade of red I'd grown up fearing. "Then get out. You're no longer a Harrison. The trust fund, the connections, the legacy, you're throwing it all away for some foolish dream." I bent down and picked up the $100. The bills were crisp, new. He'd probably had his assistant get them from the bank specifically for this moment of theatrical cruelty. "Keep the trust fund," I said, tucking the bills into my wallet. "I'll build something of my own." My father laughed, the sound echoing off the high ceilings. "You? Build something? You can barely dress yourself properly." He gestured at my simple button-down shirt and slacks, so different from his custom-tailored suit. "Without the Harrison name, you're nothing." Those words would echo in my mind for years to come, driving me through countless sleepless nights and impossible challenges. But in that moment, I just smiled. "Watch me." I walked out of that mansion with $100, a suitcase, and an engineering degree they thought was worthless. My childhood home's enormous iron gates closed behind me with a final, dramatic clang. Standing on the sidewalk, I realized I had no car. It was in my father's name. No place to live. The apartment near college had been paid for by the trust fund, and exactly $100 to my name. But I had something they didn't understand, a vision of the future and the skills to build it. I walked to the bus station, bought a $40 ticket to Silicon Valley, and used another $10 on a burger and fries. Sitting in that greasy diner, watching buses come and go, I opened my notebook and wrote 3 promises to myself. I would never use the Harrison name for gain. I would build something that would change the world. When I returned, it would be on my own terms. $50 left. Not enough to rent a place, barely enough to eat for a few days. But I had my laptop, my degree, and most importantly, an idea that had been forming in my mind throughout college. The world was rapidly moving toward renewable energy, but there was a critical problem no one had solved: storage. Solar and wind power were becoming cheaper, but batteries remained inefficient and expensive. I had developed a theoretical design for a new type of energy storage system, one that could revolutionize the entire industry. The problem was, building it would take millions in funding, years of research, and resources I didn't have. My professors had called the idea brilliant but impractical. My father had called it delusional. I called it my future. As my bus pulled away from the station, I watched my hometown disappear into the darkness. I'd spent 22 years trying to be the son they wanted. Now it was time to become the man I was meant to be. Little did I know that this $100 journey was the beginning of a story that would reshape the entire energy industry. In 10 years, I would build a company worth billions, revolutionize how the world stored and used energy, and return home not as the prodigal son, but as someone they never imagined I could become. But first, I had to survive Silicon Valley with $50 and a dream that wouldn't die. Silicon Valley wasn't the gleaming tech paradise I'd imagined. My first night, I slept on a bench in a park in Palo Alto, using my laptop bag as a pillow and my jacket as a blanket. By morning, my $50 had become $30 after buying a cup of coffee and a bagel at a local cafe. But that cafe changed everything. "You're going to get robbed sleeping out there," the barista said, watching me try to stretch my coffee for hours while using their Wi-Fi. Her name was Maya, and instead of kicking me out, she offered me a deal. Help fix their constantly breaking espresso machine, and I could sleep in the storage room after hours. I fixed their machine in 20 minutes. The owner was so impressed, he offered me a part-time job doing maintenance work. Just like that, I had income and a place to sleep, even if that place was a room full of coffee beans and paper cups. During days, I worked at the cafe. During nights, I refined my energy storage designs, using the cafe's Wi-Fi to research patents and technology trends. Maya would sometimes bring me leftover pastries, peek at my complex diagrams, and ask questions that actually helped me clarify my thinking. "So basically, you're building a better battery?" she asked one night. "Not exactly," I explained, showing her my sketches. "Traditional batteries waste too much energy during storage and transfer. My design uses a new type of molecular structure that could store energy at almost 100% efficiency." She stared at the diagrams. "And why isn't anyone else doing this?" "Because it's theoretically impossible," I grinned. "But I think I found a way." 3 months of cafe work gave me enough savings to rent a tiny room in a shared house with 5 other tech dreamers. It wasn't much, but it had a desk where I could work. I also started freelancing as a technical consultant, helping local startups with engineering problems. That's how I met David Chen. "Your solution for our power management issue saved us months of work," he said after I'd helped his startup fix a critical hardware problem. "What else are you working on?" I hesitated, then decided to take a chance. I showed him my energy storage designs. David was silent for a long time, staring at my detailed technical specifications. Finally, he looked up. "This could change everything, but you'll need serious funding to build a prototype." I know. I didn't tell him about my family's wealth, about the trust fund I'd walked away from. "I'm working on it." David proved to be more than just another client. He introduced me to Dr. Sarah Wong, a leading researcher in molecular engineering at Stanford. She spent 6 hours grilling me about my designs, trying to find flaws in my theories. "It's ambitious," she finally said. "Maybe impossible. But if it works," she paused. "I have some connections at Berkeley's Energy Research Center. Would you be interested in using their lab facilities?" Would I be interested in accessing one of the world's top research facilities? Yes, I managed to say calmly. I would. For the next year, I worked 4 jobs: cafe maintenance in the mornings, freelance consulting during the day, research at Berkeley's labs in the evenings, and refining my designs late into the night. I lived on energy drinks and determination. Then came the breakthrough. It happened at 3 a.m. in the Berkeley lab. I'd been testing different molecular configurations for weeks, trying to find the perfect structure for energy storage. When the test results came back, I checked them 3 times because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It worked. The prototype stored energy at 98.7% efficiency, nearly perfect energy transfer, something that was supposed to be impossible. Dr. Wang verified my results herself. "This isn't just a breakthrough," she said, staring at the data. "This is revolutionary." Within a week, I had meetings with 3 major venture capital firms. David helped me prepare my pitch, and Maya came over every night to help me practice, throwing tough questions at me until my answers were perfect. The first 2 VC firms said the same thing: brilliant, but too risky. The third meeting was different. "Your technology could revolutionize renewable energy storage," said Alexandra Martinez, the lead partner at Quantum Ventures. "But why should we trust a 23-year-old unknown?" I met her eyes. "Because I've spent the last year proving impossible things are possible. Give me a chance to prove one more." They invested $5 million for a 25% stake in my company, which I named Nova Energy Systems. The name was a private joke, a new star rising from nothing. I moved the research to our own facility, hired a small team of brilliant engineers, and worked harder than ever. We faced countless technical challenges, numerous failures, and moments when it seemed everything would fall apart. But 2 years later, we did it. Our first commercial-scale energy storage system was ready for testing. When the results came in, they exceeded even our highest expectations. Our system could store and deliver energy with 99.1% efficiency, nearly 3 times better than the best existing technology. The energy industry exploded with interest. Solar and wind power suddenly became not just viable, but economically superior to fossil fuels. Every major power company wanted our technology. Nova Energy Systems went public 3 years after that first VC investment. The stock price doubled on the first day. By the end of the week, my stake in the company was worth over $100 million. I bought my first suit since leaving home, not from the expensive tailor my father used, but from a boutique that catered to tech executives. Maya, now our head of operations, helped me choose it. "Planning to show off for someone?" she asked with a knowing smile. "No," I said, adjusting the perfectly fitted jacket, "but I think it's time to pay a visit home." I hadn't spoken to my family in 5 years. Through business news and social media, I knew Harrison and Sons Investment Group was struggling. Traditional investment banking was dying, disrupted by financial technology and changing markets. They needed to adapt, to invest in new technologies. Exactly what I had tried to tell them years ago. Now they were facing their biggest crisis yet: a hostile takeover attempt by a mysterious tech-focused investment firm. What they didn't know was that the firm, Digital Horizon Capital, was a subsidiary of Nova Energy Systems, my company. I booked a flight home, my $100 million net worth a far cry from the $100 I'd left with. But I wasn't going back to reconcile or to gloat. I was going back to buy the company that had declared me worthless. Maya caught me staring at my old family photo before I left. "Are you sure about this?" I tucked the photo away. They taught me that money was the only measure of worth. Time to show them exactly what I'm worth. I didn't know then that my return would shake the Harrison family to its core, that my revenge would be both sweeter and more complicated than I'd imagined, or that the $100 lesson they taught me would end up costing them everything. But I was about to find out. The Harrison and Sons Investment Group headquarters hadn't changed. The same imposing limestone building, the same gold lettering, the same air of old money arrogance. But this time, I walked in through the front door not as the disappointing son, but as the CEO of the company trying to acquire them. "Mr. Blake here to see the board," I told the receptionist, using the name I'd adopted after leaving. She directed me to the top floor, not recognizing the prodigal son returning home. The Harrison boardroom was exactly as I remembered. Dark wood paneling, oil paintings of past chairmen, the family crest carved above the fireplace. I played under that table as a child, listening to my father negotiate deals and destroy competitors. Now I sat at the head of that table, waiting. They filed in one by one, board members, executives, and finally, my father. He'd aged more than 5 years should allow. His once commanding presence diminished by stress and failing fortune. He didn't recognize me at first, his eyes sliding past me as he took his seat. "Gentlemen," I began, "I'm here representing Digital Horizon Capital regarding our offer to acquire Harrison and Sons. We're not interested in being acquired by some tech upstart," my father snapped, still not really looking at me. "Harrison and Sons has stood for 150 years and will collapse within 5 if you don't adapt." I cut in, letting my natural voice replace the carefully neutral tone I'd been using. "Isn't that right, Father?" The room went deadly silent. My father's face went from red to white as recognition dawned. "James?" "Hello, Father. Miss me?" One of the board members, old Mr. Peterson, who'd known me since childhood, actually gasped. "Little James Harrison?" "Actually, it's James Blake now," I corrected him. "And I'm here to discuss the future of this company." My father's shock turned to anger. This is some kind of trick. You're working for Digital Horizon?" I smiled. "No, Father. I own Digital Horizon. It's a subsidiary of Nova Energy Systems." I enjoyed watching their faces as the connection hit them. Yes, that Nova Energy Systems. The company revolutionizing energy storage technology worldwide. "Impossible," my father whispered. You left with nothing." "No," I said softly. "I left with $100. Your last lesson about the value of money. Would you like to know what that lesson bought?" I nodded to my assistant, who began distributing folders to each board member. Nova Energy Systems is now worth $4.2 billion. Digital Horizon Capital, which you somehow failed to investigate properly, is our investment arm. Over the past year, we've been quietly buying Harrison and Sons stock through various shells and subsidiaries. I opened my home folder. As of this morning, we own 45% of your shares. We also own the majority of your corporate debt, which, thanks to your recent difficulties, is substantial. The blood drained from my father's face as he realized the full scope of what I'd accomplished. The son he'd thrown away had returned to take everything. "The offer is simple," I continued. "Harrison and Sons will be absorbed into Digital Horizon. The family name will be retired. The board will be dissolved." I paused, looking directly at my father. "And you will step down, effective immediately." "You can't do this," he sputtered. "The family legacy is dying." I cut in sharply. "Your investment strategies are outdated, your technology is ancient, and your arrogance has blinded you to the changing world. I tried to tell you this 5 years ago, but you were too proud to listen." Mr. Peterson cleared his throat. "James, surely we can discuss this. You're still a Harrison." "No," I said firmly. "You all made it very clear that I stopped being a Harrison the day I chose to build something new instead of clinging to something old. I'm not here for reconciliation. I'm here for business." I stood up, straightening my custom-made suit that cost more than that first $100 1,000 times over. "You have 24 hours to accept the offer. If you refuse, Digital Horizon will call in all outstanding loans immediately. Harrison and Sons will not survive the week." My father found his voice again. You would destroy your own family's company? Everything we built? No, father. You destroyed it with your stubborn refusal to change. I'm offering you a chance to save what's left. The jobs, the clients, the legacy you claim to care about so much. Whether that legacy bears the Harrison name is no longer your choice. I walked to the door, then turned back one last time. Oh, and father? Remember when you said money was the only measure of a man's worth? I smiled coldly. By your own measure, what am I worth now? The next 24 hours passed in a blur of legal meetings and press inquiries. News of Nova Energy Systems' takeover bid had leaked, sending Harrison and Sons stock into chaos. My father tried to fight, of course, calling in old favors and trying to rally support. But I had anticipated everything. Every escape route was blocked. Every potential white knight was already aligned with us. Every financial lifeline was closed. The empire he'd spent his life protecting was now in my hands. They signed the papers the next day, in the same room where he'd once thrown $100 at my feet. As the lawyers finalized the details, my father approached me. He looked old, beaten, but there was something else in his eyes. Something that might have been respect, or perhaps just resignation. You planned this, he said quietly. All of it. No, father. You planned it the moment you decided my dreams weren't worth respecting. I just built something better than you could imagine. He nodded slowly. And now? Will you destroy everything out of revenge? I looked at him for a long moment. No, I'm going to rebuild it into something that actually matters. Harrison and Sons will become part of a company that's helping to solve the world's energy crisis, not just moving money from one account to another. The fact that it's no longer yours is just poetic justice. As I turned to leave, he called out one last time. James, that $100. I smiled. Best investment I ever made, father. It taught me exactly what I didn't want to become. The transition took 6 months. I restructured the company completely, modernizing its operations and redirecting its resources towards sustainable energy investments. Most of the employees kept their jobs. After all, this wasn't about punishing them for my father's sins. My father retired to our old family estate, his pride more wounded than his wallet. I'd ensured he kept enough money to live comfortably. My mother tried to reach out several times, always with hints about reconciliation, but I kept my distance. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ashes. A year later, I stood in my office at Nova Energy Systems headquarters, looking out over Silicon Valley. Maya brought in a small package that had arrived from my father. Inside was $100, the same bills he'd thrown at me 5 years ago. I'd left them on his desk after the takeover signing. With them was a note. You were worth more than I knew. I took the bills to the cafe where my journey had started. The same barista who'd once given me shelter was now a senior executive in my company, but the cafe still made the best coffee in Palo Alto. I left the $100 as a tip. Some might call it petty, using my success to take over my father's company. But I didn't do it for revenge. I did it because sometimes the only way to fix a broken legacy is to tear it down and build something better in its place. They say money can't buy happiness. But $100 taught me something more valuable. The true worth of a person isn't in their bank account or their family name. It's in what they choose to build with what they have. I built an empire, and I did it not because of the Harrison name, but in spite of it. The $100 I left with bought me something priceless. The freedom to become who I was meant to be. The millions I returned with, they just proved I was right all along. And that's worth more than any family fortune. I stood in the rain, watching the movers carry elegant furniture into my sister Emma's new mansion. A wedding gift from our parents. A $2.8 million house in the most prestigious neighborhood in Boston. Meanwhile, I lived in a small apartment above the bookstore where I worked, barely making ends meet. Isn't it perfect for them? My mother gushed, not noticing how soaked I'd gotten standing outside. Emma and James will be so happy here. And there's plenty of room for grandchildren. I forced a smile, thinking of the congratulations card I'd scraped together money to buy. It's beautiful, Mom. Emma emerged from the house, immaculate in designer clothes, her new engagement ring catching what little sunlight filtered through the clouds. Madison, you finally made it. What do you think of our little starter home? Starter home. As if a nearly $3 million mansion was just a stepping stone. It's lovely, I managed. The perfect wedding present. Oh, don't be jealous, Maddie. Emma laughed, using the nickname I'd always hated. I'm sure you'll find someone special too. Maybe one of those nice boys at the bookstore. Our mother jumped in. You know the Henderson's son is still single. He's an accountant now. Very stable career. I bit my tongue. At 32, I had a master's degree in literature and was working on my first novel. But to them, I was just the family disappointment. The daughter who chose books over business, dreams over security. I should go, I said quietly. My shift starts soon. On a Saturday? Mom frowned. But we're having a family dinner to celebrate Emma's house. Some of us have to work weekends, Mom. Emma rolled her eyes. Still so dramatic, Maddie. This is why you struggle, you know. Always choosing the hard way instead of accepting help. Help, like the full ride to business school I'd turned down. Like the position at Dad's firm I'd refused. Like the arranged dates with suitable men I'd avoided. What they never understood was that their help always came with strings. Golden handcuffs designed to shape me into their version of success. The bookstore is short-staffed, I said, already turning to leave. And I need the hours. Well, Mom sighed, at least take some leftovers home. I hate thinking of you eating alone in that tiny apartment. I didn't tell her that my tiny apartment was my sanctuary, a space filled with books, art, and peace. A place where I could write without judgment, dream without limits. The next morning, I stopped at Pete's corner store for my usual coffee. Pete, a grandfather figure who'd been running the shop for 40 years, greeted me with unusual excitement. Madison, did you check your ticket? I blinked, confused. Then I remembered. The lottery ticket I'd bought 2 days ago. A silly impulse purchase with my last $5 when the jackpot had hit record numbers. Not yet. I pulled the crumpled ticket from my wallet. What were the winning numbers? Pete's eyes sparkled. Check the news, sweetheart. I pulled out my phone, finding the lottery website. The numbers appeared on screen. 7, 13, 24, 31, 42, 53. My hands started shaking. I looked at my ticket, then back at the screen. Pete, my voice was barely a whisper. I think I won. He grinned. I know you did, honey. I watched them draw your numbers live last night. All 6 matching numbers. You just won $97 million. The world seemed to tilt sideways. I grabbed the counter for support. Sit down before you fall down. Pete guided me to a chair. Deep breaths. This is big news, but you need to be smart now. Don't tell anyone yet. Get a lawyer first, and for heaven's sake, sign that ticket. With trembling fingers, I signed the back of the ticket. Pete locked it in his safe, made me drink some water, and called his daughter, a respected financial attorney. "Caroline will meet you in an hour," he said. "She'll help you do this right." I nodded, still dazed. "Pete, my family." He squeezed my shoulder. "We'll find out soon enough. But right now, this is your moment. Don't let anyone take it from you." As I waited for Caroline, my phone buzzed. A text from Emma. "Family brunch tomorrow to discuss wedding plans. Wear something nice for once, and try not to be late like always." I stared at the message, thinking of her mansion, her perfect life, our parents' endless praise. For 20 years, I'd been the family afterthought, the daughter they'd written off as impractical, unsuccessful, lost. Now I had 97 million reasons to prove them wrong. I texted back, "Sorry, can't make it. I have something more important to do." For once, I wasn't lying. 3 weeks later, I sat in my new lawyer's office, signing the final papers to claim my winnings. Caroline, Pete's daughter, had been invaluable, helping me set up trusts, investment accounts, and ironclad privacy protections. "Remember," she said, reviewing the documents, "once we submit these, your name becomes public record. Are you ready for that?" I thought of the changes I'd already made. I'd quietly resigned from the bookstore, leaving my manager a generous check to help hire and train my replacement. I'd bought a beautiful but modest house in a quiet neighborhood, using a trust to keep my name off public records. And I'd started the groundwork for my own publishing company, determined to help other overlooked writers find their voices. "I'm ready," I said firmly. The next morning, my face was splashed across every news outlet in Boston. Local writer wins $97 million lottery jackpot. Bookstore employee becomes multimillionaire overnight. Madison Bennett claims record-breaking prize. My phone exploded with messages. Old classmates, distant relatives, forgotten acquaintances, all suddenly remembering my existence. But the messages I was waiting for came last. First, Emma. "OMG, Maddie. Why didn't you tell us? Call me immediately." Then Mom. "Madison Elizabeth Bennett. How could you keep this from your family? We're coming over right now. Where are you living?" Finally, Dad. "Your mother is hysterical. Call us this instant." I turned off my phone and poured myself a cup of tea, settling into my new home office. Through the window, I could see the garden where I planned to create a reading nook. The morning sun painted everything in soft gold, making the moment feel almost magical. My doorbell rang. Through the security camera, another of Caroline's suggestions, I saw them. My parents and Emma, standing on my porch. Emma was dressed like she was heading to a photo shoot, while my mother kept smoothing her designer dress nervously. I took a deep breath and opened the door. "Madison," my mother burst out. "We've been so worried. Why haven't you answered our calls? And how did you afford this house? The lottery money hasn't even been released yet and—" "Hello, Mother." I cut her off calmly. "Would you like to come in?" They filed into my living room, taking in the tasteful furnishings and wall-to-wall bookshelves with barely concealed surprise. "Well," Emma said, running a finger along the shelf, "I suppose now you can finally move to a better neighborhood. Maybe near my new house. There's a lovely little colonial for sale, only $4 million. "I'm happy here," I interrupted. "But thank you for your concern." "Maddie, darling." My mother leaned forward, her voice dripping with honey. "You have to understand our shock. This is life-changing money. You'll need guidance, proper financial advice. Your father knows several excellent wealth managers. I have a team of advisors, I said. And it's Madison, not Maddie. Don't be difficult, Emma snapped. We're trying to help. God knows you've never been good with money. Like that time I loaned you $10,000 for your starter business, I asked quietly. The one you never paid back. Emma's face flushed. That was different. I needed. What you needed was to take responsibility. I stood up, my voice steady. Something none of you have ever expected from her. Now see here. My father finally spoke, his face reddening. We've always supported you both equally. I laughed, actually laughed. Equally. You bought Emma a mansion for her wedding. You paid for her business school, her first car, her perfect wedding. What did you give me for graduation? A lecture about practical career choices. Because we worried about you. My mother cried. Your choices were so impractical. We just wanted. You wanted me to be like Emma. I finished. The perfect daughter. The sensible one. Well, guess what? My impractical choices led me here. My job at the bookstore, the one you all look down on, is where I bought the winning ticket. And now you can finally have a real life, Emma said, as if she was being generous. We can help you invest, get you into the right social circles. No. The room fell silent. What do you mean no? My father demanded. I walked to my desk and pulled out 3 envelopes. Emma, this is a cashier's check for $10,000, repaying the loan you've conveniently forgotten about. I handed her the first envelope. Mom, Dad, this is a check for $15,000, the total of every gift, every payment, every contribution you've ever made to my life. I've kept careful records. They stared at the envelopes, speechless. The third envelope, I continued, contains documents showing I've already established my own publishing company, created a charitable foundation for literacy programs, and set up my investments with one of the top firms in the country. I didn't need your guidance then, and I certainly don't need it now. But we're family, my mother whispered. Yes, we are. And family should love unconditionally. Support dreams, not squash them. Celebrate differences, not try to erase them. I walked to the door and opened it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting with my foundation board about funding new libraries in underserved communities. You're making a mistake, my father said stiffly. You need us. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. No, Dad, you need me. And that's the real reason you're here, isn't it? Emma stood up, her face a mask of fury. You think you're better than us now? Because of some lucky numbers? No, Emma, I always was. You just never saw it. As they left, my mother turned back, tears in her eyes. Madison, please. We made a terrible mistake. We see that now. Can't we start over? I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw for the first time how small she seemed. How all of them seemed, trapped in their narrow view of success and worth. Maybe someday, I said softly, but not today. I closed the door on their protests, walking back to my office. On my desk sat the manuscript of my novel, a story about a girl finding her voice in a world that tried to silence her. It was time to write the next chapter. 6 months later, the launch party for Bennett Publishing House was everything I dreamed of. We transformed an old warehouse into a magical space filled with books, art, and possibility. Local authors whose works we'd signed mingled with literary agents and journalists, while kids from our literacy program proudly showed off their own stories in a special display area. Pete stood beside me, beaming like a proud father. "Look at what you've built, Madison, and not a penny wasted on showing off." He was right. While I could have easily bought a gleaming downtown office tower, I'd chosen to renovate this historic building instead, creating a space that felt like home to writers and readers alike. The millions I'd won had been carefully invested in education programs, in supporting new authors, in building something meaningful. My phone buzzed. A text from Emma. "Saw your company in the business journal. Must be nice having everything handed to you. Betito, James lost his job. We could use some family support right now." I deleted the message without responding. Over the past months, they tried everything: guilt, manipulation, fake kindness, and finally, outright demands. Emma's starter mansion was apparently too small now. Mom and Dad's country club membership needed renewal. James's failed investments needed covering. I'd ignored them all. "Miss Bennett?" A young girl tugged at my sleeve. She was one of our literacy program students, clutching a notebook. "Will you read my story?" "Of course, Sophie." I led her to a quiet corner, sitting down at her level. "What's it about?" "A girl who finds a magic pen," she said shyly. "Everything she writes comes true, but she has to figure out what's really important to write about." I smiled, thinking how wisdom sometimes comes from the most unexpected places. "Madison." I looked up. My mother stood there, looking uncomfortable in the casual atmosphere. She'd lost some of her polished perfection. The past months had been hard on them, I knew. Dad's firm had lost several major clients. Emma's perfect marriage was showing cracks, and their social circle had begun to shrink as their resources dwindled. "Mom, this is a private event." "I know. I had to talk to you." She glanced at Sophie. "Alone?" I turned to Sophie. "Why don't you show your story to Miss Sarah? She's our children's book editor." After Sophie scampered off, I faced my mother. "Well, your father's company is failing," she said bluntly. "Emma's house is being foreclosed. Everything's falling apart, and you're here playing with children's stories." I stood up, anger flaring. "Playing? Look around, Mom. Really look. See those kids? They're learning to love reading, to believe in their own voices. See those authors? They're getting chances they never had before. I'm not playing, I'm building something real. But your family has never respected my choices." I cut in. "Even now, you're not here because you care about what I've built. You're here because you need money." She flinched. "We're still your family." "Are you?" I walked her over to our wall of success stories. Photos of children reading, authors signing their first contracts, community programs making real change. Family celebrates each other's victories. Family supports each other's dreams. When was the last time you asked about my novel? My goals? My happiness? I don't know. Exactly. I turned to face her. The lottery didn't change who I am, Mom. It just gave me the freedom to stop seeking approval I was never going to get. Tears filled her eyes. "We were wrong. I see that now. But can't you forgive us?" "Forgiveness isn't the issue," I said gently. "I forgave you months ago. That's why I'm not angry anymore. But forgiveness doesn't mean letting people keep hurting you. What do you want from us?" "Nothing. That's the point. I don't need anything from you anymore. And until you can want a relationship with me that isn't about money or status or your idea of success, we don't have anything to discuss." A commotion near the entrance caught my attention. Emma had arrived, with Dad and James in tow. "Really?" I sighed. You all came to ambush me at my company's launch. We're desperate. Emma cried, mascara running down her cheeks. James lost everything in that investment scheme. The bank is taking our house, and Daddy's company is dying. Please, Maddie, you have to help us. The room had gone quiet. Our guests tried to pretend they weren't watching the drama unfold. I looked at my family. Really looked at them. Dad, gray and deflated without his usual power. Emma, designer clothes now slightly worn, desperate for a bailout. Mom, torn between pride and need. No, I said firmly. No. Dad's voice cracked. I'll make you all a different offer instead. I pulled out my phone, pulling up some photos. This is Carter Financial Services. They're looking for experienced advisors with community connections. Dad, they've agreed to interview you for a senior position. No guarantees, but a fair shot. I swiped to the next photo. Emma, the local arts center needs a fundraising coordinator. With your social skills and event planning experience, you'd be perfect. James, my friend's construction company is hiring project managers. Real work, fair pay. You want us to work for other people. Emma looked horrified. I want you to earn your own way. Like I did. Build something real. Find out who you are without the fancy titles and borrowed money. And if we refuse, Dad asked stiffly, then you'll figure something else out. But you won't get a dime from me to maintain the lifestyle that made us all so unhappy. Mom stepped forward, surprising me. The Arts Center, they really think Emma would be good at fundraising? Yes, because she is good at it. When she's actually trying, not just playing the perfect daughter. Emma wiped her eyes, smearing expensive mascara. I don't know how to be anything else. Yes, you do. I took her hand, the first time we touched in months. You're smart, capable, and determined. Use those qualities for something meaningful instead of just appearances. Dad cleared his throat. The position, at Carter Financial. When's the interview? Tomorrow at 10. Don't wear your Rolex. Show them your experience, not your ego. One by one, they nodded. Not happy, not grateful, but perhaps thoughtful. As they left, Mom turned back. Your company, it's really amazing, Madison. I'm sorry we never saw. I know, I said softly. Maybe someday you'll see me too. After they were gone, Pete appeared at my side. You okay, kiddo? I looked around at my publishing house, at the dreams being born, the stories being told, the lives being changed. You know what, Pete? I really am. Sophie came running back, waving her notebook. Ms. Bennett, Ms. Sarah loved my story. She said maybe someday it could be a real book. I knelt down beside her. Want to know a secret, Sophie? Every real book starts with someone brave enough to tell their story. Like you. Like all of us. Later that night, I sat in my garden reading nook, working on my novel. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. I have an interview at the Arts Center tomorrow. Any advice? I smiled, typing back. Be yourself, your real self. The lottery hadn't just given me millions. It had given me the chance to show my family and myself what real wealth looked like. Not the money in my bank account, but the courage to finally be exactly who I was meant to be. And that was worth more than any number could measure. You're fired. 2 words I never expected to hear from my own father. Yet there he sat behind his mahogany desk, his steel gray eyes fixed on me with a coldness I'd never seen before. The office felt suffocating, despite the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline. "Dad, if you just listen about the Henderson account." He held up his hand, silencing me. "It's Mr. Matthews in this office, Alexandra. And the Henderson account was the final straw. Your innovative approach cost us a $12 million contract." I gripped the arms of my chair, forcing myself to stay calm. The traditional approach wasn't working. If we just tried my strategy for one more month. Enough. He slammed his hand on the desk, making his Best CEO award rattle. "This isn't some startup playground where you can experiment with wild ideas. This is Matthews and Sons, a company that's been built on tradition and proven methods for 40 years. I could back a laugh at the irony of Matthews and Sons, considering I, his only daughter, had worked here since I was 16, starting in the mailroom and working my way up through every department. Meanwhile, my younger brother David had waltzed in straight from business school into a vice president position. The board agrees with me," he continued, shuffling some papers on his desk. "You're not cut out for business, Alexandra. Not at this level. Maybe something smaller would suit you better. A boutique shop, perhaps, or a small local consulting firm." The condescension in his voice made my blood boil. I stood up slowly, smoothing down my charcoal gray suit, the same one I'd worn to countless meetings where I'd brought in millions in new business. Business that apparently didn't matter now. "You're making a mistake," I said quietly. He didn't even look up. "Your severance package will be handled by HR. Please clear out your office by the end of the day." I turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Dad?" He glanced up, irritation flashing across his face. Remember this moment. The walk to my office felt like a funeral march. Employees quickly looked away as I passed, news of my firing already spreading through the corporate grapevine. Only Janet, my assistant for the past 5 years, met my eyes. "I heard," she said, following me into my office. "It's not right, Alex. Everyone knows the Henderson account was lost because David promised them impossible delivery dates." I started packing my belongings into a cardboard box. "Doesn't matter now. David's a Matthews son, and I'm just the daughter who doesn't understand traditional business." Janet watched me take down my framed Harvard MBA and various awards. "What will you do?" I carefully wrapped the photo of my mother. She passed away when I was 12, but I still remembered her last words to me. "Don't let them dim your light, sweetheart. Shine anyway." "I'm going to build something," I said, surprising myself with how calm I felt. "Something bigger than Matthews and Sons could ever be." Janet's eyes lit up. "Need an executive assistant?" I smiled, really looked at her for the first time that day. Janet wasn't just an assistant. She was a brilliant operations manager trapped in an administrative role because of the old boys club mentality at Matthews and Sons. "How about chief operations officer instead?" Her eyes widened. "You're serious?" "Dead serious." I handed her my personal card, the one without the Matthews and Sons logo. "Call me tomorrow if you're interested. And Janet, don't tell anyone about this conversation." The elevator ride down to the lobby was surreal. 15 years of my life, reduced to one cardboard box. I'd given everything to this company, sacrificed relationships, worked weekends and holidays, brought in major accounts that had doubled our revenue. And none of it mattered, because I wasn't a son. As I pushed through the revolving doors onto 5th Avenue, my phone buzzed. A text from David. "Tough break, sis. But don't worry, I'll take good care of your clients. Maybe retail is more your speed." I didn't respond. Instead, I hailed a cab and gave the driver an address in Brooklyn. Time to visit the one person who had always believed in me. 20 minutes later, I climbed the stairs to a modest brownstone and knocked on the familiar red door. It opened to reveal an elegant woman in her 70s, her silver hair perfectly coiffed despite the late hour. Alexandra? My grandmother's eyes narrowed as she took in my appearance and the box in my arms. He didn't. He did. She ushered me inside, straight through to her cozy kitchen where a pot of tea was already brewing. Some things never changed. Grandma Rose always seemed to know when she was needed. "Tell me everything," she said, setting out her best china teacups. So I did. I told her about the Henderson account, about David's impossible promises, about Dad's coldness, and the board's decision. She listened without interrupting, her bright blue eyes, so different from my father's gray ones, taking in every detail. When I finished, she got up and walked to her study. I heard her opening drawers, shuffling papers. She returned with a thick manila envelope. "I've been waiting for this day," she said, sliding the envelope across the table. "Your mother knew it would come too. She made me promise to give you this when it did." My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside was another envelope, sealed with wax, and a folder filled with documents. My eyes widened as I read through them. "Grandma, this is your mother's inheritance," she finished. "The one your father knows nothing about. Her family's shipping company holdings, real estate investments, everything she built before she married him. All in a trust, waiting for you." I stared at the numbers. Millions. Not as much as Matthews and Sons was worth, but more than enough to start something new. "Why didn't you tell me before?" Grandma Rose took a sip of her tea. "Because your mother knew you needed to try it his way first, to give him a chance to see your worth." She set down her cup with a decisive clink. "He failed that test rather spectacularly, wouldn't you say?" I looked at the documents again, plans already forming in my mind. The Henderson account. They were looking for exactly what I proposed. Innovation, modernization, a fresh approach. Then perhaps, Grandma Rose smiled, it's time to show them what Alexander Matthews can really do. I stayed at my grandmother's house late into the night planning. By the time I left, I had the beginnings of a strategy that would change everything. Dad thought I wasn't cut out for business? Fine. I'd show him exactly what kind of business I was cut out for. The game was about to change, and Matthews and Sons wouldn't know what hit them until it was too late. 1 year later, the Henderson Group's downtown headquarters buzzed with anticipation. In the main conference room, Janet, now my COO, was setting up for our presentation. Through the glass walls, I could see Thomas Henderson himself pacing, checking his watch every few minutes. "They're here," Janet whispered, glancing at her tablet. Matthews and Sons representatives just arrived in the lobby. I smoothed down my tailored Armani suit, crimson red, a far cry from the conservative grays and blacks my father preferred. Right on time to watch their biggest account slip away. "Alex," Janet's eyes sparkled with mischief. "Did you plan this? The presentation time?" "Pure coincidence," I smiled. "The fact that my father and brother are desperate to keep Henderson's business while I'm here to take it. Now that's just good strategy." The last year had been a whirlwind. Using my mother's inheritance and Grandma Rose's connections, I'd built Nova Enterprises from the ground up. We specialized in exactly what Matthews and Sons feared most: innovative business solutions for the digital age. Janet had been instrumental, bringing over key talent who'd been overlooked at Matthews and Sons. Turns out I wasn't the only one tired of traditional methods. The conference room door opened. Thomas Henderson entered, followed by his board members. And behind them, looking significantly more worn than the last time I'd seen them, came my father and brother. Dad stopped short when he saw me, his face draining of color. David actually took a step backward, nearly colliding with a board member. "Alexandra?" My father's voice cracked slightly. "Mr. Matthews?" I replied coolly, extending my hand. What a surprise. I wasn't aware Matthews and Sons would be joining us today. Thomas Henderson looked between us, confusion evident on his face. "You know each other?" "Ms. Matthews used to work for us," my father said stiffly, ignoring my outstretched hand. "Matthews?" Thomas raised an eyebrow. "Any relation?" "Just a former employee," Dad cut in quickly. "Actually," I smiled, "I'm his daughter, but that's ancient history. Shall we begin the presentation?" The next hour was a masterclass in everything my father had dismissed as wild ideas. I showed them Nova's digital transformation strategy, our AI-driven analytics, our cloud-based solutions, everything the Henderson Group had wanted a year ago when Matthews and Sons had insisted on sticking to outdated methods. David's face grew increasingly red as board members nodded appreciatively. My father sat stone-faced, but I could see his hands clenching under the table. "Very impressive, Ms. Matthews," Thomas said when I finished. "This is exactly what we've been looking for. But I have to ask, why didn't you propose these solutions when you were with Matthews and Sons?" The room went silent. All eyes turned to my father. "Oh, but I did," I replied softly. "In fact, it was my last presentation before leaving the company. Wasn't it, Mr. Matthews?" Dad's jaw tightened. Before he could respond, Thomas Henderson stood up. "Well, I think we've seen everything we need. Ms. Matthews, your proposal is exactly what the Henderson Group needs to move forward. I believe our legal team already has the contracts drawn up." "What?" David spluttered. "You can't be serious. We've handled your business for 20 years. And in those 20 years, you've fallen behind every technological advancement in the industry," Thomas replied firmly. "It's time for a change." As the contracts were being signed, I caught my father's eye. He looked older somehow, defeated. Part of me felt a twinge of sympathy, but then I remembered that day in his office, his cold dismissal of everything I tried to build. The Henderson account was just the beginning. Over the next 6 months, Nova Enterprises systematically targeted Matthews and Sons' biggest clients. We didn't poach them. We simply offered them what they'd been begging for: innovation, efficiency, results. One by one, they jumped ship. Then came the day I'd been waiting for. Janet burst into my office, her face flushed with excitement. "Alex, you need to see this." She handed me her tablet. On the screen was a financial news article: "Matthews and Sons stock plummets amid client exodus. Bankruptcy fears loom." Below was a photo of my father leaving his office, looking haggard. The caption read, "CEO Robert Matthews declines to comment on company's future." My phone rang. Grandma Rose's number. "I just saw the news," she said when I answered. "How are you feeling?" I looked out my office window at the Manhattan skyline. From here, I could see the Matthews and Sons building, no longer the towering symbol of success it once was. "I didn't do this for revenge," I said quietly. "I know, darling. You did it because it needed to be done. Because sometimes the only way to fix a broken system is to build something better. They're going to lose everything, aren't they? Unless someone steps in to save them. There was a knowing tone in her voice. Someone who understands both innovation and tradition. Before I could respond, Janet appeared in my doorway again, her face serious. "Alex, your father is here. He's asking to see you." I took a deep breath. "Send him in." "Alexandra," Grandma Rose said quickly, "remember what your mother always said. Don't let them dim your light." I finished. "I remember." "No, dear. The other thing," she said. "Sometimes the strongest bridges are built over the deepest divides." I hung up and straightened my shoulders as Janet showed my father in. He looked nothing like the imposing figure who'd fired me a year ago. His suit was wrinkled, his tie slightly askew. "Alexandra," he said softly, "we need to talk." I gestured to the chair across from my desk, the same position I'd been in that day in his office. How the tables had turned. "Yes," I replied, "I believe we do." My father sat across from me, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. The mighty Robert Matthews, reduced to asking his incompetent daughter for help. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. "The board is meeting tomorrow," he began, his voice rough. "They're voting on whether to file for bankruptcy or seek immediate merger." He paused, swallowing hard. David's already resigned. Took a position with Goldman Sachs this morning." Of course he had. David had always been good at abandoning ship when things got tough. "And you're here because—" I kept my voice neutral, professional. "Because you won." He looked up, meeting my eyes. "You did exactly what I said you couldn't do. Built something remarkable. Modern. Successful." His hands trembled slightly. While I watched 40 years of work crumble because I was too proud, too stubborn to change. I leaned back in my chair, studying him. "Did you ever wonder why I stayed at Matthews & Sons for 15 years? Working my way up from the mailroom when you could have given me a top position like you did David." He shook his head. "Because I loved that company. Not for its name, not for its prestige, but for what it could be. Every innovation I suggested, every change I tried to implement, it wasn't to destroy tradition. It was to help Matthews & Sons evolve. And I shut you down at every turn," he admitted quietly. "Yes, you did." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city. "Do you know what really hurt, Dad? Not the firing. Not even choosing David over me. It was that you never once asked why I thought we needed to change. Tell me now." I turned back to face him. "Because business isn't about maintaining what worked yesterday. It's about building what will work tomorrow. Mom understood that. It's why her family's shipping company survived when all their competitors went under." His head snapped up. "Your mother's company. But that was sold after she died." "No, Dad, it wasn't." I pulled out the documents Grandma Rose had given me that night, sliding them across the desk. "Mom left it in trust for me. She knew someday I'd need it, either to save Matthews & Sons or to build something new." He stared at the papers, realization dawning on his face. All this time, she knew. She saw in you what I couldn't. "What you wouldn't," I corrected gently. He nodded, accepting the truth of it. "So this is it then. You'll watch Matthews & Sons dissolve, knowing you were right all along." I pressed the intercom. "Janet, bring in the proposal, please." Janet entered with a thick folder, placing it on my desk with a knowing smile before leaving us alone again. "What's this?" my father asked. "A merger proposal. Nova Enterprises wants to acquire Matthews & Sons." His eyes widened. "You'd buy us out?" "No." I sat down again, opening the folder. "I'm proposing a true merger, Noah's innovation and digital expertise combined with Matthew's and Son's 40 years of industry relationships and experience. Not destroying tradition, but evolving it. You'd save the company? After everything? You once told me I wasn't cut out for business, I said, pushing the proposal toward him. But what you never understood is that real business isn't about crushing competitors or maintaining power. It's about building something lasting, something meaningful. He picked up the proposal with shaking hands. And the name. Matthews Nova, I replied, honoring the past while embracing the future. And my role? You'd stay on as Chairman Emeritus, focusing on client relationships, what you've always done best. I'd be CEO, leading the company's strategic direction. I paused. As equals this time, father and daughter, finally working together instead of against each other. He was quiet for a long moment, reading through the proposal. Finally, he looked up, and I saw something I'd never seen before in his eyes. Respect. Your mother would be so proud of you, he said softly. She'd be proud of us both, if we can make this work. He stood up, straightening his tie, a glimpse of the Robert Matthews of old. The board meets at 9 tomorrow morning. Join me. I'll be there. After he left, I called Grandma Rose. Well, she asked, how did it go? We're merging the companies. Matthews Nova, bringing the best of both worlds together. She chuckled. Your mother always said the strongest bridges are built over the deepest divides. You've built quite a bridge, Alexandra. The next morning, I stood beside my father in the Matthews and Sons boardroom, the same room where I'd presented countless proposals that had been rejected. The board members watched in stunned silence as we presented the merger plan together. The vote was unanimous. Later that afternoon, I sat in what had once been my father's office, now mine. The Best CEO award still stood on the shelf, but beside it now sat a framed photo of my mother. Janet knocked and entered. The press release is ready. Want to take a look? I smiled, thinking of how far we'd both come. In a minute. First, call the Henderson Group. I want to personally tell them about the merger. Already done, she grinned. Thomas Henderson said, and I quote, it's about time those Matthews women took charge. I laughed, then turned to look out at the city. Somewhere out there, in an office much like this one, my father was probably doing the same thing, seeing New York not as it was, but as it could be. A year ago, he'd fired me for not understanding business. Now together, we were building something neither of us could have created alone. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's showing them a better way forward. And sometimes, just sometimes, the black sheep of the family becomes its greatest legacy. That evening, I visited my mother's grave, placing a single white rose beside her headstone. The merger announcement was already making headlines. Matthews Nova, a new era in business. You were right, Mom, I whispered. About everything. My phone buzzed. A text from Dad. Dinner tomorrow? I'd love to hear more of your ideas about the digital transformation project. I smiled, typing back, looking forward to it. The sun was setting over Manhattan, casting long shadows across the cemetery. But I wasn't standing in anyone's shadow anymore. I was casting my own light, bright enough for us all to see by. And that, perhaps, was the greatest success of all.
Too old, I repeated, staring at Marcus Bennett across his polished mahogany desk. My voice was surprisingly steady despite the rage building inside me. After 15 years of dedicated service, that's your reason. Marcus leaned back in his leather chair, a practiced look of sympathy on his face that didn't reach his cold blue eyes. Victoria, let's be honest. The tech industry moves fast. We need someone more dynamic, someone who can keep up with the pace. I was 53, not dead, and I'd just finished leading the most successful project launch in the company's history. But there I sat, being patronized by a man 20 years my junior, a man whose career I'd helped build. The severance package is generous, he continued, sliding a folder across the desk. 3 months' pay, health insurance through the end of the year. It's more than fair. I didn't touch the folder. Instead, I thought about the drawer in my home office, filled with 15 years of carefully preserved documents. Letters, emails, memos, evidence of every questionable decision, every unethical move Marcus had made on his climb to the top, including the letter he thought he'd destroyed 5 years ago, the one that could bring his entire empire crumbling down. Is this decision final? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. Years of practice had taught me how to hide my thoughts behind a mask of professional composure. Marcus nodded, already reaching for his phone, dismissing me from his mind. HR will help you with the paperwork. Security will escort you to clear out your desk. I stood up, smoothing my blazer. Very well. Thank you for the opportunity to work here, Marcus. The words tasted bitter in my mouth, but I forced them out anyway. He glanced up, surprised by my calm acceptance. For a moment, I saw uncertainty flicker across his face. Good. Let him wonder. As I walked out of his office for the last time, my mind was already racing with possibilities. I'd spent years watching, waiting, documenting. Now it was time to use what I gathered. The security guard who escorted me to my desk was Tommy, a kind man who'd always greeted me with a smile. I'm sorry about this, Ms. Reynolds, he said quietly as I packed my personal items into a cardboard box. It's not right, what they're doing. I gave him a small smile. Everything happens for a reason, Tommy. My colleagues watched from behind their computer screens as I packed, their faces a mix of pity and discomfort. None of them knew that my desk had been cleared of anything important weeks ago, when I first noticed the signs of what was coming. The subtle exclusion from meetings, the younger employees being copied on my projects, Marcus's increasingly condescending tone. Jessica, my young assistant, approached with tears in her eyes. Victoria, I can't believe they're doing this. You're the best manager we've ever had. I hugged her gently. Keep your head up, Jess, and keep documenting everything like I taught you. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. She'd been my protege, and she knew some of my methods, if not my reasons. The drive home was surreal. 15 years, ended in a 15-minute meeting. But as I pulled into my driveway, a sense of calm settled over me. I'd known this day was coming. I prepared for it meticulously. Inside my house, I went straight to my home office. The room was simple but elegant, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a vintage desk I'd restored myself. I opened the bottom drawer, pulled out a false bottom, and lifted out a thick accordion file. 15 years of evidence, organized by date and potential impact. But the crown jewel was the letter from 5 years ago, when Marcus had made his biggest mistake. He'd written it late one night, slightly drunk and feeling invincible after closing a major deal. The letter detailed exactly how he'd manipulated the numbers, shifted funds, and deceived the board. He tried to destroy it the next morning, but I'd already made copies. I set the letter aside and opened my laptop. Time to start organizing my evidence, preparing for the moment Marcus would realize what I had. It might take weeks or months, but eventually he would remember. And when he did, I would be ready. My phone buzzed, a text from Jessica. They're already interviewing replacements, all under 35. I smiled, screenshotting the message. More evidence for my collection. Then I opened my email and began drafting messages to key board members. Not to send yet, but to have ready. Each one would be perfectly crafted, revealing just enough to create panic without showing my full hand. As the sun set outside my window, I felt a sense of purpose I hadn't experienced in years. Marcus thought he was setting me out to pasture, forcing me into an early retirement. Instead, he'd finally given me the freedom to act. I picked up the letter, reading it again, although I'd memorized every word. Marcus's handwriting was messy, betraying his emotional state when he'd written it. The details were damning, not just for him, but for half the executive team. Too old, I muttered, putting the letter back in its hiding place. We'll see about that. That night, I slept better than I had in months. The weight of pretending, of playing a loyal employee while gathering evidence, was finally lifted. Now I could focus on the next phase of my plan. The following morning, I woke up early and went for a walk in my neighborhood. The spring air was crisp, carrying the scent of blooming flowers. As I walked, I thought about all the younger employees who'd been pushed out before me, the ones who didn't have the foresight or opportunity to gather evidence like I had. When I returned home, there were 3 missed calls from Marcus's secretary and an email about exit paperwork. I ignored them all. Let them wait. I had waited 15 years. They could wait a few days. Instead, I sat down at my desk and began writing a detailed timeline of every significant event I documented. Each entry was cross-referenced with the evidence I collected: emails, memos, photos, recordings of meetings. It was a tapestry of corruption, woven so tightly that pulling any single thread would cause the whole thing to unravel. Around noon, my doorbell rang. It was Jessica, holding a bag of takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant. "I brought lunch," she said, her eyes red from crying. I couldn't stay there today, watching them celebrate like they'd done something good. I let her in, leading her to the kitchen. "Celebrating, are they?" She nodded, unpacking the food. "Marcus took the executive team to that fancy steakhouse downtown. They're calling it a restructuring celebration. It's disgusting." I made a note to add this to my timeline. Every detail mattered, no matter how small. "Victoria," Jessica said hesitantly, "what are you going to do?" I took a bite of pad thai, considering my answer carefully. For now, nothing. Sometimes the best action is patience. She looked confused but didn't press further. Smart girl. The less she knew, the better protected she would be when everything finally came to light. After Jessica left, I spent the afternoon organizing my digital files. Every piece of evidence was backed up in multiple locations: cloud storage, external hard drives, even a safe deposit box at my bank. Marcus might be tech-savvy, but I learned long ago never to keep all my eggs in one digital basket. That evening, I received my first LinkedIn message from a concerned colleague. "Just heard what happened. This is outrageous. The whole department is in shock." More messages followed, each one expressing disbelief and support. I responded graciously to each one, maintaining my professional demeanor. Every message was screenshot and added to my files. The pattern of age discrimination was establishing itself without any effort on my part. As I prepared for bed that night, my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. "Victoria, it's Marcus. Just wanted to check that you received the severance paperwork. Please sign and return it by Friday, and I hope there are no hard feelings. You understand this is just business." I played the message twice, then saved it. His voice had a slight tremor, barely noticeable unless you knew what to listen for. He was nervous, though he probably didn't even realize why yet. Lying in bed, I thought about the years I'd spent building my case. The late nights copying documents, the accidental recordings of damning conversations, the careful cultivation of allies throughout the company. It had required patience, attention to detail, and the kind of wisdom that only comes with age. Too old, I whispered into the darkness, smiling. "Your mistake, Marcus. Your biggest mistake." Sleep came easily again, filled with dreams of justice long delayed but not denied. In my experience, revenge was a dish best served not just cold, but meticulously prepared. The next few days passed in a blur of administrative tasks and planning. I ignored the severance paperwork, letting it sit unopened on my desk. Each day of delay would make Marcus more anxious, though he didn't yet know why. I spent my time organizing, preparing, waiting. The pieces were all in place. Now it was just a matter of timing. Like a chess player setting up the perfect endgame, I knew that patience was my greatest weapon. And somewhere in the back of Marcus's mind, a clock was ticking. Soon he would remember that letter, and everything would change. But for now, I waited, letting him enjoy his false sense of victory. After all, I had nothing but time. And contrary to what Marcus believed, my age wasn't a weakness. It was my greatest strength. Because while youth might bring energy and ambition, age brings something far more valuable: the wisdom to know exactly when and how to strike. 3 months after my firing, the first crack in Marcus's confidence appeared. I was having coffee at my favorite cafe when Jessica called. "Victoria," she whispered, her voice trembling with excitement. "Something's happening." Marcus just had a complete meltdown in the executive meeting. I stirred my latte calmly. Oh? What kind of meltdown? He was reviewing some old files for the upcoming audit, and suddenly he went pale. Like ghost white. He started asking about document retention policies and who had access to his old correspondence. Then he locked himself in his office for 2 hours. I smiled into my coffee, right on schedule. The annual audit was approaching, and Marcus had finally remembered the letter. The drunken confession he thought he'd destroyed 5 years ago. How interesting, I said mildly. Keep me posted. Later that afternoon, the first call came. Marcus's number flashed on my phone screen. I let it ring through to voicemail. Victoria, it's Marcus. Listen, I've been thinking about how things ended, and I'd like to discuss it, perhaps over dinner. Call me back. I didn't. Instead, I went to my home office and pulled out the letter in question. The paper had yellowed slightly with age, but Marcus's scrawled handwriting was still clear as day. The contents were even more damning than I remembered. Detailed descriptions of fraudulent accounting practices, insider trading, and systematic discrimination. 2 more calls came that evening. I ignored them both. The next morning, I drove to my bank and added another document to my safe deposit box. A detailed account of Marcus's recent behavior, witnessed and signed by Jessica. Every reaction, every panicked question about old documents meticulously recorded. When I returned home, there was an email from Marcus. Victoria, I hope you're doing well. I've been reflecting on our working relationship and feel we parted on unfortunate terms. Perhaps we could meet to discuss potential consulting opportunities. Your experience would be valuable to us. Best regards, Marcus. I screenshot the email and added it to my evidence file. The contrast between this tone and his dismissive attitude 3 months ago would make an interesting exhibit. That afternoon, I had lunch with Barbara, a board member I cultivated a friendship with over the years. She didn't know about my evidence, but she knew injustice when she saw it. The company's not the same without you, she said, sipping her wine. Marcus is acting strangely. Paranoid. Yesterday, he asked for access to all archived correspondence from 5 years ago. I raised an eyebrow. 5 years ago specifically. How odd. Barbara leaned forward. There are whispers about the upcoming audit. Discrepancies in old reports. Marcus keeps saying everything's fine, but she shrugged meaningfully. I listened sympathetically, asking just the right questions to keep her talking. Every piece of information was another thread in my web. The next week brought more calls, more emails, each one increasingly desperate. Marcus went from offering consulting work to hinting at a potential position on the board. I maintained my silence. Finally, he showed up at my house. I was in my garden when his Mercedes pulled into my driveway. He stepped out, looking less polished than usual. His tie was slightly askew and dark circles shadowed his eyes. Victoria, he called out, trying to sound casual. I've been trying to reach you. I set down my gardening tools and stood slowly, brushing dirt from my hands. Yes, I saw your calls. I've been busy enjoying my retirement. You know, at my age, it's important to rest. He flinched at the subtle jab but pressed on. Look, I think we got off on the wrong foot. The company misses you. I miss your institutional knowledge. Ah, there it was. Not my skills, not my leadership, but my knowledge. What I might know. How thoughtful, I replied. But I'm quite content here with my garden. Amazing how much wisdom you can gain working with the earth. Everything leaves traces, doesn't it? Like these flowers, even when you think they're gone, the roots remain, waiting for the right moment to bloom again. Marcus shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting to my house. Victoria, I think we need to talk. About old times. Old documents. I picked up my gardening shears, watching him take a small step back. Old documents? You'll have to be more specific. I kept very thorough records during my 15 years at the company. It was one of the advantages of my experience. There might have been a letter, he said quietly, from around 5 years ago, after the Miller account. I tilted my head. A letter? I handled so much correspondence over the years. Was this letter important? Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the mild temperature. If you have it, if you happen to keep it, we could make arrangements, very generous arrangements. Are you trying to bribe me, Marcus? I asked pleasantly, setting down the shears. That doesn't seem wise, given the circumstances. His face hardened. I don't know what game you're playing, but I'm not playing any games, I interrupted. I'm just an old woman tending her garden. But you know what they say about age bringing wisdom. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have plants to water. I turned my back on him, a calculated risk that paid off. He stood there for a moment longer, then retreated to his car. As he drove away, I allowed myself a small smile. The seeds of doubt were firmly planted. That evening, Jessica called again. Marcus had it searching through old backup files all afternoon. He's freaking out. Is he? I said mildly. How unfortunate. By the way, Jess, remember to forward me those emails about the new hiring policies. The one specifically mentioning age preferences. Already done, she replied. Victoria, when are you going to do something? I looked out my window at the garden where I confronted Marcus. Everything has its season, Jessica, even justice. The next day, I received a formal letter from Marcus's personal attorney, offering to resolve any outstanding issues for a substantial sum. I filed it with my other evidence without responding. 3 days later, Marcus called again. This time, I answered. Hello, Marcus. Victoria, he said, his voice strained. Please, that letter. I know you have it. Name your price. I let the silence stretch for a moment. It's interesting, isn't it? How something as simple as a letter can suddenly become so valuable, almost as valuable as 15 years of experience. What do you want? He demanded. Want? I'm exactly where I want to be, Marcus. Enjoying my retirement, tending my garden, organizing my files. I have so many files, you know. Letters, emails, recordings. It's amazing what accumulates over 15 years. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. Recordings? Oh yes, I said cheerfully. I may be old, but I learned to adapt to new technology, another advantage of experience. Why are you doing this? I'm not doing anything, Marcus. I'm simply being thorough. Methodical. Careful. All those qualities you dismiss as being too... What was the word? Ah yes, dynamic. The line went quiet for so long, I thought you hung up. Finally he spoke again, his voice barely a whisper. How many other letters are there? I smiled into the phone. Which ones are you worried about? After he hung up, I went to my office and began preparing the next phase of my plan. Marcus's panic was satisfying, but it wasn't enough. Not after what he'd done to me and so many others. I opened my laptop and began drafting emails to each board member, carefully crafted messages that would hint at what I knew without revealing everything. Like dropping pebbles in a pond, each one would create ripples, spreading doubt and uncertainty through the company's leadership. The game was entering its final phase, and I had all the pieces in place. Marcus thought he forced me into retirement. But he'd actually given me exactly what I needed: time, freedom, and motivation. I picked up the original letter, reading it one more time. Soon, very soon, it would be time to show my full hand. But not yet. Like my garden, this revenge needed time to fully bloom. For now, I would let Marcus stew in his own fear, wondering just how many letters I had, just how many recordings existed. Let him lose sleep over what might be revealed in the upcoming audit. After all, I had nothing but time, and I intended to use every minute of it. The annual shareholders meeting was scheduled for a bright Thursday morning in September, exactly 1 year after my firing. I'd chosen this day carefully. Timing, as always, was everything. The night before, I couldn't sleep, not from nervousness, but from anticipation. I sat in my garden, watching the stars and thinking about how far I'd come. My phone buzzed constantly with desperate messages from Marcus. Please, we can work this out. Name your price. Think about what you're doing. I let each one go unanswered. The time for negotiations had passed long ago. That morning, I dressed with particular care. A crisp charcoal suit, pearl earrings, and my mother's vintage Cartier watch. As I applied my lipstick, I thought about all the people Marcus had pushed out before me. The women over 40, the men nearing retirement age, all discarded like outdated equipment. Jessica met me in the parking lot of the corporate headquarters, clutching a thick manila envelope. Everything's ready, she whispered. The board members all got your email this morning. They're in a panic. I nodded, taking the envelope. And Marcus. Locked in his office is at 6 a.m. He's called his lawyers 3 times already. The email I'd sent to the board was simple but effective. A meeting request with a single attachment, a scanned copy of one of Marcus's lesser indiscretions. Not the big letter, just enough to prove I had evidence of wrongdoing. The subject line read, "Additional documents for today's meeting." The lobby was chaos when I walked in. Board members huddled in corners, whispering urgently. Executives hurried back and forth, their faces tight with stress. Several people stopped and stared as I passed, but no one tried to stop me. Barbara intercepted me by the elevators. "Victoria," she hissed, "what's in those documents you mentioned?" I smiled warmly. "Let's discuss it in the meeting, shall we?" The shareholders' meeting was held in the grand conference room on the top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a spectacular view of the city, though today no one was admiring the scenery. The room was packed, tension thick in the air. Marcus sat at the head of the table, trying to maintain his composure, but I could see the slight tremor in his hands as he shuffled papers. When I walked in, his face went pale. "Victoria," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "This is a private meeting." I pulled out a chair and sat down. "Actually, as a shareholder, I have every right to be here. I may have been fired, but I never sold my shares in the company." Before he could respond, I began distributing copies of a thick document to everyone present. "I've prepared some materials for review," I said pleasantly. "I believe you'll find them quite illuminating." The room fell silent as people began reading. I watched their faces: shock, disbelief, anger. The document detailed 15 years of systematic age discrimination, financial misconduct, and corporate fraud. Each claim was supported by emails, memos, recordings, and photographs. And at the center of it all was Marcus's infamous letter, its contents even more damning in the harsh light of day. This is lies," Marcus sputtered, but his protest sounded weak even to his own ears. "Is it?" I asked, my voice carrying across the silent room. "Every document is authentic, every recording verified." I believe the SEC would be particularly interested in the section about the Miller account, and the Department of Labor might have questions about your hiring practices. One of the major shareholders, a stern woman named Eleanor, looked up from the papers. "Marcus, is this true? Did you really fire 38 employees over the age of 50 in the past year alone?" "It was restructuring," he stammered. "Cost-cutting measures. And replace them all with employees under 35? I added helpfully, "At higher salaries." The board chairman cleared his throat. "Marcus, I think you need to step out while we discuss this." "You can't be serious," Marcus protested. "She's just a disgruntled ex-employee." I stood up slowly, commanding the room's attention. "No, Marcus, I'm someone who watched you systematically destroy careers and lives because you thought age made us worthless. I'm someone who had the wisdom and patience to gather evidence while you got sloppy and arrogant. And now I'm someone who's going to watch you face the consequences." The next 2 hours were a blur of heated discussions, legal consultations, and hastily called votes. By the end, Marcus was suspended pending investigation, and the board had voted to appoint an interim CEO, Barbara. As security escorted Marcus out, he tried one last time. "Victoria, please. We can still work something out." I walked up to him, close enough to see the defeat in his eyes. "You know what they say about wisdom coming with age? It's true. I learned to wait, to watch, to document everything. And now you get to learn what it feels like to be pushed out of the company you helped build." The aftermath was exactly as I planned. The SEC launched a full investigation. The Department of Labor opened an inquiry into the company's hiring practices. Marcus faced criminal charges for financial fraud. 1 month later, I sat in my garden enjoying the autumn sunshine. My phone rang. "Barbara, the board's reviewed your proposal," she said. "They want you to head the new Ethics and Compliance Department. Full autonomy, direct board reporting, and complete authority to implement age-inclusive hiring policies." I smiled, watching a butterfly land on one of my roses. "Tell them I accept." "Victoria," Barbara added, "I have to ask, why did you wait so long? You could have exposed Marcus years ago." "Sometimes," I said, thinking of all the lives Marcus had impacted, all the careers he derailed, justice needs time to mature. Like a garden, you can't rush it. You have to nurture it, tend it, and wait for the right moment to harvest. After hanging up, I walked through my garden, touching the flowers I planted the day after my firing. They had grown strong and beautiful, just like my revenge. Marcus had thought age was a weakness, But he'd learned the hard way that with age comes patience, wisdom, and the ability to play the long game. The next morning, as I walked into the office, my new office, I passed the security desk where Tommy still worked. He grinned and gave me a thumbs up. Jessica was waiting by my door, beaming. "Welcome back, boss." I smiled, touching the nameplate on my door. "It's good to be back. Now, let's make some changes around here." My first act as Ethics and Compliance Director was to implement a comprehensive age discrimination training program. My second was to review all terminations from the past 5 years, offering reinstatement to those who had been unfairly pushed out. Marcus's letter hung framed on my wall, a reminder that patience and wisdom will always triumph over arrogance and discrimination. Below it, I placed a small plaque with a quote I'd chosen carefully. "Age is an issue of mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter." As I settled into my new role, I thought about all the other Victorias out there, experienced professionals being pushed aside because of their age. My story would give them hope, show them that sometimes the best revenge isn't swift or dramatic, but patient and methodical. The company flourished under the new leadership. Our inclusive hiring practices brought in a diverse range of talent, combining the energy of youth with the wisdom of experience. We became a model for other corporations, proving that success doesn't have an age limit. 1 year to the day after the shareholders' meeting, I received a letter from Marcus. He was awaiting trial, his reputation in tatters, his career destroyed. The letter was an apology, probably advised by his lawyers, but I appreciated the irony. Another letter, another turning point. I filed it away with all my other evidence, a final piece in the story of how patience and wisdom had triumphed over discrimination and arrogance. Then I went back to work because there was still so much to do. After all, I wasn't too old, I was just getting started.
I always knew I was second best in my parents' eyes, but I never thought they'd skip my wedding. I'm Olivia, and this is the story of how my family's perfect image finally shattered, starting with an empty front row at what should have been the happiest day of my life. Growing up, the dynamic in our house was clear. My younger sister, Kate, was the star, and I was the supporting cast. Every achievement of hers was celebrated like a national holiday, while mine were treated as expected background noise. Kate gets an A in math. Time for a special dinner out. I make valedictorian. Good job, honey. Did you hear Kate made the junior varsity tennis team? Don't get me wrong. I love my sister. Kate's never been deliberately cruel or dismissive. She just grew up in a different reality than I did, one where her every move was applauded and photographed, while I learned to celebrate my victories quietly, by myself. Maybe that's why I went into event planning. There's something satisfying about creating perfect moments for other people, even if my own life was full of overlooked milestones. By 28, I'd built a successful business, planning everything from corporate galas to destination weddings. My parents barely noticed, too busy following Kate's journey of self-discovery through 3 different college majors. Then I met Daniel. He came to me as a client, needing help planning a charity gala for his pediatric medical practice. I remember the first time we met. He was flustered, running late after an emergency surgery, his tie slightly crooked. "I'm so sorry," he said, rushing into my office. Tiny humans don't stick to schedules. Something about his genuine warmth, the way he immediately put me at ease, felt different from anyone I'd ever met. By the end of our first planning meeting, we'd spent more time talking about our lives than the gala. He asked about my family, and I found myself sharing things I usually kept hidden. "It sounds lonely," he said softly when I described growing up in Kate's shadow. Being the responsible one, the one who's expected to understand. No one had ever put it into words quite like that before. Our professional relationship quickly turned personal. Within 6 months, we were dating. Within a year, we were living together. Daniel saw me, really saw me, in a way my family never had. He celebrated my successes, supported my dreams, and most importantly, made me feel like I mattered. When he proposed, it was perfect in its simplicity. No grand gestures or elaborate schemes, though I'd planned enough of those for clients. Just a quiet evening at home, after I'd had a particularly stressful day with a bridezilla client. "You know what I was thinking?" he said, as we sat on our balcony sharing takeout. "You spend so much time making other people's special moments perfect. Maybe it's time someone did that for you." He pulled out a ring, his grandmother's vintage sapphire, reset in a modern setting. Before he could even finish his speech, I was saying yes through happy tears. The next day, I called my parents to share the news. Mom answered on the fourth ring, sounding distracted. "Oh, honey, that's wonderful," she said, in the same tone she used when I told her about my business success. "But listen, can I call you back? Kate just got some exciting news too. She's finally decided to graduate." My sister, at 25, had spent 7 years in college, changing majors like most people change clothes. Apparently, she'd finally accumulated enough credits in various subjects to qualify for a degree. "That's great, Mom," I said, trying to keep the hurt out of my voice. "But about the wedding?" "We'll talk soon, sweetie. Kate needs help planning her graduation party. It's such a big achievement for her. You know how much she's struggled to find her path." I hung up feeling deflated. Daniel found me staring at my phone. "They don't deserve you," he said simply, pulling me into a hug. I threw myself into wedding planning, determined to create the perfect day. As one of the top event planners in the city, I had access to the best vendors, the most beautiful venues. We chose a date in late May, a Saturday when the weather would be perfect for our garden ceremony. May 20th. I told my parents over dinner, 6 months before the wedding. "I've already sent you the save the dates." Mom's fork clattered against her plate. "Oh no." "What?" I looked between them, a familiar sense of dread building in my stomach. "That's Kate's graduation weekend," Dad said. "She's finally getting her degree, and the ceremony is that Saturday morning." But the wedding's at 4 p.m., I stammered. "You could do both." "Honey," Mom cut in, using her be reasonable voice. "The graduation is in Boston. We need to be there to help Kate prepare, attend the ceremony, and of course there's the celebration after. We can't possibly make it back in time." "Then come to the wedding instead," I said, hating how small my voice sounded. "It's my wedding day." Dad shook his head. "This is a huge moment for Kate. She's worked so hard for this degree. You understand, don't you? You're so good at handling things on your own." There it was, the familiar refrain. Good, responsible Olivia, who always understands, who never makes waves, who plans everyone else's perfect moments while her own fade into the background. "Can't Kate walk in a different ceremony?" I asked. "Most universities have multiple graduation dates. We can't ask her to do that," Mom said firmly. "This is her moment. She's so excited about graduating with her friends, and you know how she struggles with change." I looked at Kate, who was staring at her plate, unusually quiet. "What do you think, Kate?" I asked directly. She glanced up, then quickly looked away. "I mean, I've worked really hard for this." "And I haven't?" The words came out sharper than I intended. "I haven't worked hard building my business, creating a life, finding someone who loves me." "That's different," Mom said dismissively. "You've always been the capable one. Kate needs us there for support." I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. And I don't? It's my wedding day. Be reasonable, Olivia, Dad sighed. There will be plenty of people at your wedding. Kate's graduation is more important right now. More important. The words hung in the air like poison. I left dinner early that night, driving home through tears. Daniel was waiting up, and one look at my face told him everything. They're not coming, are they? I shook my head, collapsing into his arms. Then we'll make it so spectacular they'll regret missing it for the rest of their lives, he said firmly. Looking up at him, I felt something shift inside me. All my life, I'd accepted being second best, being the one who understood, who gave way, who compromised. But not this time. Not my wedding day. Yes, I said slowly, a plan already forming in my mind. Yes, we will. What my family didn't know was that being the city's top event planner meant I had connections, lots of them. And I was about to use every single one to create an event that they'd never forget missing. They thought Kate's graduation was more important. Fine, I'd show them exactly what they were choosing to pass up. The morning after that disastrous dinner, I sat in my office, staring at my extensive contact list. Years of planning other people's perfect moments had earned me favors with the best vendors in the business. Now it was time to call them in. First call, Marco, the city's most sought-after florist. Darling, he answered on the first ring. Tell me you're not canceling next month's Henderson wedding. Actually, Marco, this is about my wedding. There was a pause. Your wedding? The one you're planning yourself? Olivia, mes amours, I thought we talked about this. You know the saying about doctors making the worst patients. Things have changed. I said, my voice steady. My parents won't be attending. They're choosing my sister's college graduation instead. The silence on the other end was deafening. Marco had done the flowers for my sister's last 3 graduation parties, the one celebrating her switching majors. Those bastardos, he finally breathed. What do you need? Everything. I want people to walk in and forget how to breathe. I could practically hear him rubbing his hands together. The garden concept we discussed, but elevated. Crystal-draped trees, floating flowers, illuminated pathways. We'll make the Queen of England's wedding look like a backyard barbecue. Next on my list, Philip, the French pastry chef who normally had a 3-year waiting list. Ma chérie, he cooed when I explained the situation. Say no more. I will create something so spectacular, your parents will weep when they see the photos. 6 tiers minimum, hand-painted sugar flowers, gold leaf, the works, and for the groom's cake. Daniel loves astronomy, I offered. Perfect. A galaxy theme in dark chocolate and mirror glaze. The stars will actually twinkle, I promise you. One by one, I contacted every top vendor I knew. Charlotte, the lighting designer who'd worked on Olympic ceremonies. Jin, the photographer who shot for Vogue. Eduardo, the cocktail genius known for his molecular gastronomy creations. Each one listened to my story, and each one promised to outdo themselves. No budget constraints, I told them all. I've been saving for this my whole life. It was true. While my parents poured money into Kate's ever-changing college career, I'd been quietly building my nest egg. Now it would all go toward creating something unforgettable. When Daniel came home that evening, he found me surrounded by mood boards and sample books. Should I be worried? He asked, only half joking. I showed him Philip's cake design. His eyes widened at the rotating galaxy tire. Okay, that's amazing. But Liv, You don't have to do all this just because of them. I'm not, I said, realizing as I spoke that it was true. I'm doing it for us. For once in my life, I'm going to create my own perfect moment, not someone else's. He kissed my forehead. As long as you still show up to marry me, the rest is just details. But the details were everything. Over the next few months, I threw myself into planning with an intensity that surprised even me. The garden venue was transformed into an ethereal wonderland. Marco's team created a canopy of crystal-draped cherry blossom trees that would light up as the sun set. Charlotte designed a lighting system that would make the entire garden seem to glow from within. The invitations alone were works of art, hand-calligraphed on handmade paper, with pressed flowers and gold leaf accents. I sent my parents' invitation via registered mail, requiring a signature. They needed to actively choose to reject it. When it came back with my mother's signature, I filed it away carefully, evidence of their choice. The RSVPs started pouring in. My vendor's appreciation for the situation had spread through the industry grapevine, and suddenly everyone wanted to be part of this wedding. Celebrity photographers offered to second shoot for Jin. Award-winning musicians asked to perform at the ceremony. My mother called occasionally, always with the same message. I hope you understand why we can't be there. Kate needs us. Each time, I responded with detailed updates about the wedding plans. The hand-painted dance floor is being installed next week. The vintage champagne is being flown in from France. The string quartet that plays for the royal family is learning Daniel's favorite song. I could hear her hesitation growing with each call. Good. Then came the society page coverage. One of my regular clients was a magazine editor, and she was determined to document every aspect of the planning process. Modern Cinderella plans her own fairy tale, read the first headline. Photos of the preparations appeared weekly, the custom-designed bridesmaids' dresses, the hand-forged ceremony arch, the preview of Philip's spectacular cake. Did you see this week's article? I asked Mom during one of her calls. They're comparing it to Grace Kelly's wedding. Isn't that amazing? Olivia, she said slowly, don't you think this is getting a bit excessive? Oh no, I replied sweetly. This is just the beginning. 3 weeks before the wedding, Kate called. She'd never been one for confrontation, preferring to let our parents fight her battles. So this was unexpected. Liv, she said, her voice small. I saw the magazine coverage. It looks incredible. Thank you. I talked to my advisor. There's another graduation ceremony in July. I could switch. Don't bother. I cut her off. It's too late. The plans are set. Mom and Dad feel terrible. No, they don't. They feel uncomfortable because people are talking. Because for once, they can't control the narrative about our perfect family. She was quiet for a moment. I never meant to always come first. But you did, and you let it happen, and now you all get to live with that choice. The week before the wedding, my phone was flooded with messages from relatives and family friends, all variations on the same theme. How can you go through with this without your parents there? Can't you postpone it? Family should come first. I forwarded them all to a special folder labeled, For Later. Daniel found me in my office, reviewing the final timing schedule. You okay? I looked up at him, at his kind face and worried eyes. You know what? I really am. For the first time in my life, I'm not trying to make everyone else happy. I'm not being the understanding one, the responsible one, the one who gives way. I'm just being me. He smiled. That's who I fell in love with, you know. Not the perfect event planner, not the dutiful daughter, just you. 2 days before the wedding, the final piece of my plan fell into place. My friend at the magazine called to confirm the coverage details. Full spread, top photographers, immediate online release with hourly social media updates, she promised. The whole city will be watching this unfold in real time. Perfect, I said, thinking of my mother's habit of obsessively checking social media. Make sure you get lots of shots of the empty seats in the front row. The day before the wedding, I received a text from my father. It's not too late to change the date. I sent back a photo of the garden setup, the thousands of twinkling lights, the crystal trees, the floating candles in the reflection pool. You're right, I wrote. It's not too late for you to change your minds, but it is too late to save your perfect family image. He didn't respond. That night, at the rehearsal dinner, Daniel's parents gave a beautiful speech about welcoming me to their family. I didn't cry until his mother hugged me and whispered, "We'll be in the front row tomorrow, honey. We'll be there." Back in our apartment, I found Daniel adding something to his vows. Spoiler alert, he grinned. I may have included a line about choosing you first, every day no matter what. I fell in love with him all over again in that moment. The morning of my wedding dawned clear and perfect. As I sat in the bridal suite, surrounded by my closest friends and Daniel's family, my phone buzzed with a final text from my mother. The graduation ceremony starts in an hour. We really wish we could be there too. I looked at myself in the mirror, already in my hand-beaded gown, my hair and makeup perfect, and typed back 3 words, "No, you don't." Then I turned off my phone. It was time for my moment, and I wasn't going to let them dim it anymore. As I stood at the entrance to the garden, waiting for my cue to walk down the aisle, even I was stunned by how everything had come together. Marco's crystal-draped trees sparkled in the late afternoon sun, their branches heavy with thousands of white orchids and roses. The pathway before me was lined with illuminated glass orbs that seemed to float just above the ground, creating a river of light leading to the altar. Daniel's father appeared at my side, looking dashing in his tuxedo. After my parents made their choice, he had quietly offered to walk me down the aisle. "Every bride deserves someone by her side for that walk," he'd said. "Ready, sweetheart?" he asked now, offering his arm. I took one last look at the empty seats in the front row, the seats that should have held my family. Someone had placed a single white rose on each chair, making their absence even more striking. Perfect. "Ready?" I said, taking his arm. The string quartet began playing their custom arrangement of 1,000 Years. Not the typical wedding version, but a haunting, ethereal adaptation that filled the garden like a spell. As we appear at the end of the aisle, 400 guests rose to their feet, gasping audibly at the sight. I'd chosen a dress that would photograph spectacularly, a custom-designed masterpiece with a bodice covered in hand-sewn crystals that caught the light with every movement, creating the illusion that I was wrapped in starlight. The cathedral-length veil, edged with delicate lace that had taken artisans 3 months to create, floated behind me like a cloud. But it was Daniel's face that made me catch my breath. He stood at the altar, tears streaming unashamedly down his cheeks, looking at me like I was every star in the sky. In that moment, I forgot about my parents' empty seats, forgot about revenge and perfect moments and society page coverage. All I could see was him. The ceremony was everything we'd planned and more. As we exchanged our vows under an arch of floating candles and cascading flowers, Charlotte's lighting design shifted subtly, bathing us in a warm golden glow that made everything feel dreamlike. Jin's cameras clicked constantly, capturing every perfect detail. "I choose you," Daniel said in his vows, his voice carrying clearly across the hushed garden. "I choose you first, every day, above all others. I choose you when it's easy, and when it's hard. I choose you when the whole world tells us we're wrong. I choose you, Olivia, forever." I saw his mother dab at her eyes in the front row, right where she promised she'd be. The reception was a masterpiece of timing and spectacle. As the sun set, thousands of tiny lights hidden throughout the garden began to twinkle on, transforming the space into an enchanted forest. Philip's cake was unveiled to audible gasps, 6 tiers of hand-painted sugar flowers and gold leaf, with that magical rotating galaxy tire that actually seemed to contain its own universe. Eduardo's signature cocktails changed color as they were poured, each one telling its own story. The dance floor, hand-painted with a design that echoed the stars in my dress, lit up in patterns that followed the dancers' movements. Every detail was captured, photographed, documented, and immediately shared across social media platforms. I knew my mother would be obsessively checking her phone during Kate's graduation celebration. I imagined her watching the spectacle unfold in real time, seeing what she'd chosen to miss. The magazine's social media team was doing an exceptional job, posting stunning photo after stunning photo, each one more magical than the last. At midnight, just as the party was hitting its peak, my phone buzzed with a text from Kate. "Mom's been crying for hours. The graduation party is ruined. This isn't what I wanted." I handed the phone to Daniel without reading her message. "Deal with this for me?" He nodded, tucking the phone away. This was my moment, and I wasn't going to let them intrude on it anymore. The next morning, as Daniel and I prepared to leave for our honeymoon, the magazine's coverage was already going viral. "Wedding of the Century," the headlines proclaimed. "Event planner's dream wedding sets new standards." Photos of the empty front row chairs with their solitary roses were featured prominently, with captions that told the story of parents who chose to skip the most spectacular wedding the city has ever seen for a college graduation. The society pages were brutal in their commentary. In an era where family values are supposedly paramount, one columnist wrote, "What does it say when parents choose to miss this once-in-a-lifetime celebration? One can only imagine the regret they must feel watching these incredible images from afar." My parents' social circle was merciless. Their phones were flooded with messages from friends and acquaintances, all expressing variations of shocked disbelief. "How could you miss this? What were you thinking? Your own daughter's wedding." Their carefully cultivated image of the perfect family was shattered. No one wanted to hear about Kate's graduation, not when they could talk about the wedding that looked like it came straight from a fairy tale, the wedding her own parents chose to miss. My mother tried calling repeatedly as Daniel and I boarded our flight to Bali. I let each call go to voicemail, saving them in that special folder labeled "For later." "Olivia, please," she begged in one message. "We made a terrible mistake. We should have been there. Please call us." "The photos are incredible," Kate said in her message. "I should have switched ceremonies. I'm so sorry." "We didn't realize," Dad's voice cracked in his message. "We didn't know it would be like this." But that was the point, wasn't it? They never realized, never knew, never saw me. They'd spent so many years looking past me, choosing Kate, assuming I would understand and accept and give way. They never imagined I could create something so spectacular, something they'd regret missing for the rest of their lives. 2 weeks later, lounging on a beach in Bali, I finally read through all their messages. There were hundreds of them, each one more desperate than the last. The full impact of what they'd missed was hitting them hard. Should we invite them to the reception we're having when we get back? Daniel asked, watching me scroll through the messages. I thought about it for a moment, then shook my head. No, they made their choice. Now they get to live with it. You're not worried about burning bridges. They burned the bridge, I said quietly. I just showed them what was on the other side. 6 months later, I won Event Planner of the Year for my own wedding. The photos were featured in every major wedding magazine, each one highlighting the stunning details, the magical atmosphere, and yes, those empty seats in the front row. My parents tried to make amends. They sent gifts, letters, tearful voicemails. Kate switched to part-time studies and moved back home, her own perfect daughter image tarnished by the backlash. Their social life became awkward, every event a reminder of the wedding they chose to miss. You could forgive them, Daniel suggested one night, watching me delete another series of apologetic texts. I could, I agreed. But you know what? I don't want to. For once in my life, I'm not being the understanding one. I'm not smoothing things over or making excuses for them. They chose Kate's 5th graduation over my wedding. They can live with that choice forever. A year after our wedding, I received a call from a prestigious client who had seen my wedding photos. I want exactly that, she said. That level of magic, that attention to detail. Money is no object. As I began planning her event, I realized something. My wedding hadn't just been about revenge. It had been about finally stepping into my own light, about creating something spectacular without dimming it to make others comfortable. It had been about choosing myself, just as Daniel chooses me every day. My parents still try to reach out occasionally. Last week, Mom left a message about how they're ready to move forward as a family. I saved it in my special folder with all the others. A reminder of the day they thought my wedding was skippable and how spectacularly wrong they were. Some people say I'm being too harsh, that family deserves forgiveness. Maybe they're right. But as I look through our wedding albums, at the pure joy on our faces, at the magic we created, at the empty chairs that tell their own story, I know I made the right choice. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about hurting others. It's about showing them exactly what they chose to miss. And sometimes the most perfect moment comes not from being chosen, but from choosing yourself.